A very good morning to you. It is 7 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilf, good morning from both of us. Thanks for being with us.
Breaking news, Andy Burnham pledges to cap single bus fares at £2 as new figures reveal the scale of the cost of living challenge.
Sky News reveals the serious health risks posed by the UK's largest illegal waste dumps.
The latest inflation figures cross any second now. We'll also be telling you about our new economic pressure tracker to help you keep on top of your household finances.
Two of PC Andrew Harper's killers might be eligible for early release. It's under plans to ease prison overcrowding.
And calls for a change in the law amid concerns that big cats, cobras and crocodiles are being kept as pets.
Good morning. Thanks for being with us. The reason that Wilf is scribbling is because the latest inflation figures, so the cost of living figures, have just been published.
And they are just better than expected. So CPI, this is for the month of June, has come in at 2.6%. The forecast was for 2.7%. May, the prior reading was 2.8%. So a slight improvement that in the CPI number. Core CPI is in line with expectations, 2.5%. That strips out energy and food. That was where it was expected. Services inflation, marginally higher than expected, 3.6%. The forecast was for 3.5%. So you'd say fine with this, 2.6%, the headline number. The forecast was 2.7%. Reminder, we've got a Bank of England meeting at the end of this month on the 30th of July. There's no change in rates expected then. As we get into August and September, the market is still pricing in an interest rate hike, not a cut, a hike. This probably won't change those expectations much. So end of this month, next couple of days, don't expect the Bank of England to act, but you probably would still expect a slight increase in interest rates as the year goes on.
So slightly better than expected inflation, but cost of living still a big priority for the government, because we have actually had through now the second big policy announcement as well this morning from the new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, and it is a cap. Single bus fares are going to be capped at £2 from January, so the maximum fare is going to be cut by a third. Andy Burnham says this is about giving people more breathing space.
On the cost of living, Sophie's mentioned, and there's money set aside for it. It's going to cost £454 million. The bulk of that money, they're saying, is coming from a reprioritisation of money that the Department for Energy and Net Zero was going to use for international climate projects. They're still going to give that money to those sources, but it's going to be as a loan as opposed to a gift. So they're saying this is fully funded, and of course it comes after yesterday. The Prime Minister saying he's scrapping VAT on household electricity bills.
Right, let's bring in Alex at this point, shall we? Our political correspondent Alex Rogers is with us. So another cost of living announcement. I have to say with buses, I always think we don't talk nearly enough about buses, right? Because actually so many people are affected by it. It's the most popular form of public transport.
And I think this is Andy Burnham really targeting those on the lower incomes. As you say, it's the most popular form of transport. It's really used by people in rural areas as well. And it's kind of continuing on his legacy in Greater Manchester, where he capped fares at £2. So really going for the cost of living, setting out his stall early. I think there are still going to be questions about how it's funded. As we say, it's coming from the Net Zero Department, which I think is really interesting. The old department of Ed Miliband, the new department of one of his key backers, Miatta Fahnbulleh. But I think he senses that voters don't really like net zero. It's become really unpopular, a lightning rod for criticism. And I think it does also stymie some of the criticism he's going to get from the Tories, because they've been wanting cuts to this department. So it kind of neutralises any of the attacks that he might get from them.
I think two other quick points to note. This is to start from next year.
Yes.
And the announcement yesterday is from the 1st of October. So two big announcements. Will people feel it in their pocket? You know, we always talk about, do they feel the easing of the cost of living, not just read the headlines in the papers? Will they feel it immediately? No, but I couldn't agree more with you about the headline being where this comes from in the budget, because I think there's a lot of questions going forward, which we don't know the answers to yet, about what is he going to do more broadly on the bigger issues in that department? And could there be announcements around drilling in the North Sea to come? I don't think this gives us that much of a hint on that because it's very small and it's an international budget of net zero, but certainly one of the unanswered questions we still have.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just that some of this money is quite invisible as well. You know, people don't really know where a lot of this money is going. It's going abroad to this. I think it was to the Tropical Forest Forever. That they're saying that's still going to be funded, but by loans rather than.
So that means they have to pay it back, as Wilf was saying. Is that what we think?
I think so. Yeah, it's. I'm not quite clear on it.
Yeah, we're going to have to try and ask Alexander to get the full details on it because the wording is pretty. You know, more flexible ways to meet our international climate objectives. It's a little bit woolly, I think it's fair to say.
I also thought it was interesting that they use the word expected underspends. That sounds a little bit optimistic and a little bit precarious. You know, we were expecting the department to underspend. I mean, I think everyone's experience of government is that they overspend departments. So
yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah, I think by the way, both of them are sort of not that expensive, these announcements. So whether they are perfectly fully funded or not, they're getting away with. You know, you're not seeing a massive reaction in the bond market because they've announced some £18 billion unfunded tax cut or spending increase. So again, a little bit of slack, I guess, cut by the markets in the short term to these sorts of announcements. But obviously, as they get into the more meaningful stuff in the budget come the autumn, there'll be huge scrutiny on if there are bigger announcements.
Yeah, meaningful in terms of more money spent.
Yeah.
Alex, thank you very much indeed. Alex Rogers speaking to us there.
We're going to turn now to illegal waste dumping that has seen a surge in recent years and led to mountains of festering rubbish at sites across the country.
No, it's bad for properties, it harms communities, obviously, and it also severely impacts the environment. But that's just scratching the surface. In a 6-month investigation, Sky News has worked with scientists to test samples from the soil, water and air of 3 key sites. The findings are something we really should be worried about. Dan Whitehead's been investigating.
There's a lot of smoke.
Yeah, you can smell it as well. It's a very strong sort of plasticky smell.
On the edge of Gloucester, 100,000 tonnes of waste has been building up. Illegally dumped, it's so big, it regularly sets on fire. For years now, we have been investigating the growing number of illegal waste sites across the country. During that time, the rubbish has been festering, leaching into water, literally burning in to the countryside air. Over the last 6 months, we've been working with a team of scientists to try and uncover what this rubbish is made up of and potentially what harm it's causing. We've tested the air, water and soil at 3 of the country's largest illegal waste sites. Here in Gloucester, in Ranskill near Doncaster and up in Wigan, a dump that sits in the constituency of the new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham. Collectively, they make up more than 170,000 tonnes of waste. And after months of analysis, the results are in. How significant, how worrying are the things that you've found?
In short, very worrying. The bottom line is, here we have seen, by our identification process, hundreds of compounds which are of a concern that if you inhale them, certainly if you inhale them over a period of time, could well have significant health effects.
Hidden in the smoke in Gloucester, we found matches for 763 different chemicals. It is a huge number. A toxic mix that is 4 times higher than what you'd breathe in from a car exhaust. Among them, names such as styrene, ethylbenzene, chlorobenzene and naphthalene. All can cause breathing difficulties, burning eyes and nausea, with long-term exposure linked to neurological problems. The village of Hynham lies just half a mile from these burning fumes. The smell often drifts over, and last summer a large fire at the dump meant kids at the primary school had to stay indoors.
I just think it's absolutely shocking because it's very close to a big community and there are several local schools in the area, and just to think that that is what you're breathing in and you're completely unaware of it, the government are just turning a blind eye to it.
Our results are no less worrying up north. In Doncaster, there was a strong match for a chemical called carbon tetrachloride, so toxic it's phased out globally with links to cancer. In Wigan, a possible ID for Demetin O, a pesticide that's banned in the UK. Our samples were taken at source, and there are now urgent calls for further tests to understand just how far these dangerous compounds are travelling.
Some of the strongest science which has come out is about how very low-level chemical exposures in populations over the long term have health effects which nobody predicted they would have. There is no argument that you should ignore this and hope the problem goes away.
We presented all of our evidence to the government, and in response, the Environment Agency says its own scientists are now carefully considering our findings. It added that it's made 18 arrests linked to illegal waste dumps since April this year. Contaminated water posing a risk to wildlife, fumes in the air causing fear amongst locals. Our results show dangers that may be hidden in plain sight. Dan Whitehead, Sky News.
Dan, it's such a great investigation, and everyone watches these films that we put together, you've put together over the last year or two, and is shocked by how awful the site is. I guess this backs now it up with the sort of hard evidence and data that will it force now local councils and governments to act because they're going to have more responsibility if they don't? Is that perhaps what happens?
I mean, there's been growing pressure, hasn't there, as we've been reporting on this over the last year or so, to clean these sites up. And in fact, the site in Wigan there, which we featured, they announced at the start of this year when we did a north-south divide report on the fact that Kidlington in Oxford, that big site, is being cleared up and the north one wasn't. And the government announced earlier this year that they are going to clean that up at a cost to the taxpayer of around sort of £9–10 million. That's due to begin, we think, at the end of this summer. But that's one of nearly 600 active illegal waste sites across the country. The vast majority are not as big as this, but it's a huge problem, and the vast majority are not being cleared out because the taxpayer doesn't want to pay. The legal onus on who should clean this up falls on the landowner. But quite often, it might be a farmer who's rented a corner of a field. Once whoever is responsible for this buys a plot of land, in some cases they're known to sort of sell it into 500 different plots, really confusing the land registry, and it's proving very difficult for the authorities to find actually who's behind it.
It's absolutely disgusting, I have to say.
What's the punishment? Oh, sorry.
No.
I was going to say, what is the punishment?
Well, I mean, we've seen in cases like the Environment Agency, along with police, has made 18 arrests since April this year. They've really ramped it up over the last sort of 12 to 24 months since the reporting began from us here and others. They can be fined, they can go to jail. It takes years and years. In the cases we've seen, quite often there'll be a suspended sentence. They may be fined £30,000, £40,000, £50,000. They are meant to be paying around £126 a tonne to get rid of this waste at landfill properly. So what you'll find these organised criminal gangs doing is taking the money, or maybe charging a little bit less to someone who needs to get rid of this waste. They'll get that money, and then they might pay, say, £5,000, £10,000 to rent a corner of a field for a year or so from a farmer. So you can see the profit margins. It is described as the new narcotics. It is extremely profitable for these, and this isn't just minor fly tipping a mattress here. These are organised criminal gangs who have worked out a way to essentially fiddle the system and move from one field and then go to another.
It is, yeah, it's pretty unbelievable. You were saying about how waste should properly be disposed of, and I have to say, just looking at the mound, it does make me just really think about how much we just chuck away. What do we actually do with it in the proper way?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's legally managed landfill sites, and there are some things, especially at these sites here, which are so nasty that they do need to be managed properly.
But just like illegally, that is basically just dumping it in.
It's dumping, and that's one of the big problems because.
But I mean, if it's legally done, so there are legal sites where it is literally, I mean, not as bad as this, obviously, but we're just holding it in fields and stuff.
Yeah, and it gets buried, but there's things to, methane vents to prevent what's happening here. You can see on our screens here, the problem at Gloucester is it's 100,000 tonnes. When you're on top of it, where you're stood, you're meant to be on top of where trees are. You look on Google Maps, there's trees there. It's so high, it's self-combusting underneath, and that's what's releasing these really dangerous chemicals that we've found. Yeah, there are illegal waste sites, but the key thing about those is they're being properly managed, and if there's anything and properly monitored, and the fumes have been monitored. These places here, OK, the Environment Agency is carrying out some monitoring. The calls are now to urgently, off the back of the sort of scratch-the-surface findings we've found, is to urgently carry out other monitoring to find out if these dangerous chemicals are travelling further and potentially causing harm to the local villages and the wildlife and environment.
Dan, great stuff. And more of the report online, more from Dan later in the programme. You can also watch the full report on the YouTube channel.
As we've already discussed, the latest inflation figures have been published. A little bit more breathing room for Andy Burnham, maybe, is he?
Oh, marginal.
Just marginal.
2.6 versus 2.7?
Yes.
Not going to make a huge difference. I mean, the key point being is I don't think we get a rate cut at any point this year. We won't get a change in July. We're more likely to get a rate hike still in August or September. That would give him genuine breathing room, but it's not looking likely. And
look, to keep across how we're impacted by it, Sky News has launched a new economic pressure tracker, whatever that is. Paul is here to tell us more.
Shall I show you what the Sky News economic pressure tracker is? It's very
By the way,
exciting.
I am really excited about this. I think a little bit more than Sophie, so you've got to sell it to Sophie now.
Tail is wagging about this. So this is the Sky News economic pressure tracker. It's our data and forensics team have pulled together 20 data sources to help us understand how global economic shocks affect the prices that matter here at home. It's available on our app, on our website. We're going to have a play with it here now. We've got the inflation numbers this morning. Consumer price inflation. You click on that tab. There it is at the touch of a button. It shows where inflation has fallen to. This is the number for June, remember, 2.6%, down from 2.8%. So it has fallen back. See, that's where the attacks on Iran started. Now, the biggest single driver of that fall in inflation is fuel prices. So let's take a look at them. Look, petrol prices we have here. We can see, and remember, this is the number for June. This is inflation. It's backward looking. You can see as we headed into June here, petrol prices were indeed falling. Now, they've ticked up a bit recently because of the ongoing uncertainty about what's going on in the Gulf. We can see, again, it's not just petrol. Plenty of people have diesel. And if I change that on, again, you see diesels saw even sharper rises. Again, in June, it was falling back. Now, inflation from here is forecast to increase next month. One of the reasons for that is the energy price cap, another key household expenditure. We were talking about it yesterday. So there's the current energy price cap. You can see it is forecast. It rose in July. And it is forecast to rise again, which is the reason that economists expect that inflation number to go up. Now, there's plenty more here we can look at. I talked about fuel prices. We can look at the Strait of Hormuz specifically, and this really is very helpful when you're trying to understand what has happened to oil prices. This shows us how the daily transits from the Strait of Hormuz, you're pretty familiar with this. The war began, they stopped almost completely. They've come back up a bit of a return towards normality. You can actually look at our tracker and see how many ships are transiting in and out of the Gulf every day. Excuse me, this is a daily tracker. And perhaps even more helpfully, look here, what kind of vessels they are. This is a week-on-week change. We look at the crude oil tankers. It's been a fall in the last week. If we can get this number of oil tankers back up to pre-war norms, well, those oil prices might fall back and help us with petrol price at the end. All the energy commodities are in here. Here's oil. You can see gas, heating oil and jet fuel prices. That's the path of oil. Look, back above $90. That is a worry for the global economy and perhaps more importantly to us here at home, what's going to happen to domestic inflation. We have all the food commodities here too. Wheat, dairy, cereal prices. Interestingly, from that inflation, one of the factors that pulled down inflation in June was falling food prices. This is the cereal grain price index. It's a global commodity price, but again, it's heading in that direction. It helps explain the numbers that you are experiencing at the supermarket and at the petrol pumps. And the last one I'll show you is the economic data. Can be a little dry. I know you disagree, Wilf. But we talked about interest rates. We can show you that. You can look at these anytime you like. They have been flat rates since the war began. What's going to happen to that rate this year? The next meeting of the Bank of England expected to stay steady, but what will happen later in the year, we'll have to wait and see. And I'll show you the last one, gilt yields. This is the de facto cost of borrowing for the UK government, 5.03%, a little increase in the last couple of days. Now, that has been seen in many economies around the world. That isn't just the change of Prime Minister, but it's very useful to keep an eye on. That is a measure, perhaps, of how the markets are reacting to a new government. So perhaps John Healey and Andy Burnham might be among those who can now look at the Sky News economic pressure tracker on our app and on our website. Wilf will be looking to and keep across all these figures as they change. It's updated daily and it pulls together all the numbers behind the ones that really count here at home.
They certainly should be, Paul. It's a great new tool. Thanks for sharing it with us, and we'll be discussing it more with Paul during the rest of the show.
A couple more stories to bring you today. The Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky has sacked his military chief, General Alexander Syrskyi.
The decision follows protests against the decision to dismiss a popular defence minister last week.
Prosecutors say that the former MP Anne Widdecombe was hit on the head 21 times with a hammer before she was found dead at her home in Devon.
The court heard that the former Tory minister had been eating lunch when the suspect, 28-year-old Joshua Kerry, allegedly attacked her. He's been charged with her murder and remanded into custody with a provisional trial date listed for June next year.
A judge in Florida has ruled that Donald Trump must hand over detailed financial records. It's all part of his defamation lawsuit against the BBC. The US president is suing the corporation over an episode of Panorama that edited together different sections of his speech on the day of the US Capitol riot that appeared to show him urging his supporters to take violent action. It's the second full day of Andy Burnham's premiership, and we've had another big announcement. This time it is on capping bus fares. So to get more on this, we are joined by the Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander.
Good morning, Sophie. Thanks for having me on.
First of all, congratulations on keeping the job.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
How does the process work? Do you kind of get a little heads up that you can't stray too far from Westminster and then get a phone call? What happens?
I didn't at all, actually. I had commitments in London on Monday morning, and the truth of the matter is it was all kept very, very closely under wraps. I was sat in my Commons office doing some constituency work, and I got a call late in the evening asking me to go into number 10, which I did, and then sat down with our new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham. I had absolutely no idea.
So there's no kind of nudge, nudge, wink, wink. There's absolutely nothing.
I don't know whether anyone else had that, but I didn't.
OK, so interesting to know. Right, let's talk about this announcement, shall we? Bus fares capped at £2. What's the idea?
It's great news. We know that there are millions of people across the country who depend upon buses in their day-to-day lives, and we've had a £3 bus fare cap in place over the last couple of years, but we know that people are still really struggling with the cost of living, that there are people who will be sat at home at the end of the month before they get paid thinking, actually, I haven't got any money left in my bank account. And so reducing that bus fare cap for single bus fares from £3 to £2 outside of London, I think is going to make a real difference to people. Of course, when Andy was Mayor of Greater Manchester, he did brilliant work with the bus network there. He capped fares. He also took control of setting the timetables, the routes, and it made a really big difference to the local economy because public transport is essential for high-performing local economies. And so this is all about just giving people some breathing space as well. And it comes on top of course, the announcement yesterday to take off VAT from energy bills, which is going to save people
we'll talk about that in a
money
minute.
in the autumn.
And look, it's the most popular form of public transport. It's something we don't talk about enough. I think that's completely right. Can you just explain to me how it's funded? Because I looked at the release, right, £400 million of the funding will come from switching investments set aside for international climate finance to loans, which will give us more flexible ways to meet our international climate objectives. In English, what does that mean?
So it means that £400 million had been allocated in the budget of the Department for Energy, Security and Net Zero. And some of that £400 million goes to funding projects in other parts of the world which can assist with tackling climate change. Now, it had initially been the intention that that money would be given as grants. So you pay the money to fund a project in a developing country and you don't get that money back. We're switching that process so that it is now a loan, so that the money will then be paid back to the British government. Now, actually, so look, the detail of it needs to be worked through, but in order for loans to qualify as overseas development assistance, the terms of the loan need to be reasonably favourable to the developing country, and it needs to contribute to developing that country's economy. And so it makes sense to switch the spending. Instead of it being a grant, it will be a loan, and then that frees up money to spend on domestic priorities and spend on our public transport.
I don't want to interrupt, but there's just a couple of things I just want... Because you say there on the interest, I know that you're saying the details need to be worked out, but it feels like that is quite a fundamental one, because if you look at, to be completely honest, the West's track record of loaning money to developing nations, you can see why people might have anxiety about that, right? So do we know if there's going to be interest or not?
So this is quite standard to have loans for international climate finance. As I say, the detail will need to be worked out. We wanted to make the announcement today. It's a really big priority for the new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, to help with the everyday cost of living.
Yeah.
And so,
I understand
and as I said to you,
just trying to get the details of, because this is.
But Sophie, you will appreciate that I'm not going to sit in your studio and tell you how something will work when the detail hasn't yet been worked through.
I'm really sorry. I'm not.
But the point that I have made to you,
Heidi,
and I will repeat, is that in order for loans to actually count towards your ODA budget, your Overseas Development Assistance budget, then the terms on which those loans are given do need to be reasonably favourable to the developing country. We're not wanting to fleece anyone here, and we actually want to maximise the development potential of this money that is available. And so it is in line with what a number of other countries do on international climate finance.
If I could just come in again.
But you'll forgive me.
No, Heidi, I'm
not going to give you the detail because I don't have the detail to give you.
Heidi, if you just spoke in slightly shorter answers, we could have more of a conversation here. The problem, I really don't want to interrupt you, and I understand that completely. But I also want to try and get through some of the things I want to get through in the interview, if that's okay as well.
Problem.
I don't think it's unreasonable, by the way, for asking for detail of the government announcement that you've given to us to talk about today.
And I have given you information. I've set out that the cost of the money, the new money that the Department for Energy, Security and Net Zero is giving is £454 million. £54 million of that is an underspend within the existing budget. £400 million is switching the money that was previously going to be given out in grants to climate finance projects in developing countries is now going to be given out in loans, so some of that money comes back in. The precise detail that you're asking me about the nature of interest that would be applied to those loans, I don't have. That information will be worked through. I'd be very happy to come back and speak to you again about it in the future. I think it's right, though, that we look at what the priorities need to be for the country. When we know that people are struggling with the cost of living, we know how important bus journeys are for those everyday journeys, getting to the shops, being able to get to see a GP, going to work. And, there's 1 in 5 households don't have access to a car in this country. And so I think with Andy Burnham's premiership and him coming into office, he said that we need to help people. And I think on top of the changes that we've made around electricity bills, with VAT coming off electricity bills in the autumn, this is starting to give you a sense of the direction that Andy wants to take this government.
Yeah, I'm in absolutely no way quibbling about the importance of the cost of living measures and buses in particular. Can I ask about Darren Jones?
Of course.
He put out something on social media yesterday. Good news that VAT will be cut on electricity bills. It's a simple way for families to save a few quid, but the digital ID programme was funded. The government will have to set out how it would pay for its new policies in the budget. Was that a helpful intervention from Darren Jones?
So we all know that the Office for Budget Responsibility actually looked at what the cost of implementing the digital ID programme would be, and they suggested that would be £1.8 billion. And so what we are doing is taking about £800 million of that and using that to cover the costs of taking VAT off electricity bills this autumn. Look, the way that this works, when there's a pressure in government budgets...
The question was about Darren Jones.
I'm not sure it was either the most timely or wise tweet that Darren has ever put out. Darren's a really good friend of mine, and I've got a lot of time for him. He was a great servant to the Cabinet and to Keir's government. But, it wasn't the most wise or most timely of tweets. Government was going through a process of finding the money to be able to pay for the rollout of digital ID. Andy Burnham has become the Prime Minister. He said that isn't going ahead. And so that money that was being found across government to fund that programme is now instead being used to take VAT off electricity bills. I think that's a really good thing, because I know how much people worry when that bill lands on the doormat and they're looking at how much they're having to pay, or they get the email through into their inbox. And so I think actually giving people some breathing space on the cost of living is a really positive thing. I think it's great news that Andy announced that yesterday. And obviously it's really good news that we've got this £2 bus fare cap coming in across England as well.
Hadi Alexander, good to have you on the programme. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Hadi Alexander there, the Transport Secretary, talking about that new announcement on a cap of £2 bus fares. Coming up, we're going to continue our coverage of toxic waste, speaking to a Wigan resident who's a bit worried about the health implications of one of those dumps near her home.
Hear that whistle and that crunch. We know that they're coming from the south of the city, where there's a column of Russian armoury.
I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Welcome back. Two of the men jailed for killing police officer Andrew Harper may be eligible for early release under the government's controversial scheme to ease overcrowding in prisons.
So PC Harper died on duty. He was dragged down a country road behind a car while he was responding to a burglary. His mother has given an interview to The Telegraph where she described the situation as an insult.
Barnaby's here with all of the details in and around this potential early release.
Yeah, I mean, this all relates to the new sentencing laws which are coming into force in September, and essentially they will mean that some people convicted of serious crimes will now be released from prison after serving half of their sentence rather than 2/3 of their sentence. Now, in relation to PC Andrew Harper, just to remind you, he was 28 when he died. He was responding to a theft of a quad bike and he got his leg caught in a strap trailing along from a getaway car driven by 3 teenagers, all of whom were convicted of manslaughter. Now, 2 of those teenagers, Jesse Cole and Albert Bowers, received 13-year sentences for manslaughter. They are now going to be eligible for release after serving half of that sentence. This was brought in by the Ministry of Justice to deal with massive overcrowding in prisons. And we should remember back in 2024, the first couple of weeks of the Starmer premiership, this was a big story. There were essentially no more prison places. But Andrew Harper's mother has given this interview to the Telegraph, Debbie Adlam, and she has said essentially she's disgusted by this. Let's just bring you a quote from that interview. She said, "It makes me feel sick. Andrew's life doesn't get to come back. It feels like a slap in the face and an insult. Any reduction makes a mockery of sentencing. It's a gift for prisoners to be let out early. The cost is to us, the victims, and then the public." The Police Federation has also concurred with her sentiment, really. They've said they're disgusted by this. But the Ministry of Justice has, in a way, hit back, I think. They've pointed out the issues they were facing with overcrowding. We've got a statement from a Ministry of Justice spokesperson. They say this was a horrific crime and our deepest sympathies are with PC Andrew Harper's family and friends. In 2024, the country was facing a prison crisis and a total breakdown of law and order, with judges ordered to stop jailing dangerous criminals. This government is committed to public safety. We are building prison places at the fastest rate since the Victorian era and taking the difficult decisions needed to lock up the most dangerous offenders. Andrew Harper's family did campaign for mandatory life sentences for those convicted of the manslaughter of emergency workers. That law is going to come in, but it doesn't apply retrospectively, and that's why I think they're so saddened and disgusted, as they've said, by what's about to happen.
Barnaby, thanks so much. Let's bring you more now on that Sky News investigation that we were discussing earlier with Dan Whitehead about the toxic chemicals that have been discovered at illegal waste sites across the UK.
So we work with scientists to test the air, water and soil at 3 of the country's largest dumps, and one's in Gloucester, in Wigan and also in Doncaster.
The Gloucester site, 763 chemicals were identified and tests of fumes were found to be 4 times more toxic than emissions from a car exhaust.
And some of those chemicals can cause breathing difficulties, burning eyes, nausea, and also potentially long-term neurological problems as well.
We're joined by Nicola Rowson, who lives next to a site in Wigan, the one we just mentioned in Wigan. A very good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us. I mean, just tell us more broadly how awful it is being so close to one of these massive sites.
It's been absolutely awful, the vermin and the smells. As a family, it's really affected us. We've got a child with SEN, or special needs. He struggles with his sensory profiles, so the smells and everything have just been that bad. He can't live at home. So, you know, apart from the chemical side of things, just the smell alone has driven my child out of his home.
I actually can't, just looking at the pictures, I cannot believe how massive this site is. And it's very, very close, as you can see, to, what, football pitches, houses. Did it just start springing up from nowhere? What happened?
So the waste started building up in October 24, and just from there it just started getting bigger. We was getting 20 to 30 lorries a day of waste just coming down our street. Now, at the time, we thought it was something that may have been legit. We thought someone would stop this. And then November, December time was when residents actually started complaining to the authorities.
And but that's, I mean, it is just unfathomable. Why wasn't it stopped at the time before it was built? What did the authorities do? They couldn't just put a police car there to block it?
So when we rang the Environment Agency, we'd just get through to a call centre, they'd take the details, and then that was it. The council was reporting it to the Environment Agency, and the police were telling us that it's an environmental agency problem. Because of the sheer amount of waste, it falls on the Environment Agency, and unfortunately the Environment Agency didn't act quick enough to move the rubbish, stop the rubbish. They didn't seize any vehicles or anything. They were sat here watching the waste turn up in the end, and nothing got done until after the fire, really, from a resident's perspective anyway.
Do you have hope that Andy Burnham is going to look at this issue differently? You live in his constituency, his new constituency, and he's engaged with you on this.
So Andy Burnham's been and met me a few times. I was actually down in street welcoming him the other day. He's promised me that this will be tidied up. Now, with Andy's help, we did get the government to agree to clear it up. Now, it's supposed to be moving in October and it'll take 8 to 9 weeks to be cleared approximately. But it is on the way to being cleared.
Well, that is good news, at least. I love that picture of you at Downing Street as well. That must have been quite something. I just still can't get my head around that there were lorries driving down your street, that this massive... I mean, it's not like you can miss it, and no one did anything about it. I think it is absolutely extraordinary. You mentioned there a fire. What happened with the fire?
So last summer, it set on fire for 9 days. It was declared a major incident. It just combusted. The fire brigade came down. They didn't know how to tackle the fire. It's not something that they put out every day of the week. So now there is fire precautions in place. There's temperature probes, there's water tanks on site. So should it go up again, they've got a little bit of water to keep the fire small, to give the engines time to hook up to the water hydrants. So we now have 24-hour security, as you can see behind me. So it has took a year, but we now have fire precautions and preventatives on site. This should have happened last year, but, you know, here we are.
It is just unbelievable.
I can't believe it. I'm absolutely astonished. Well done you for the campaigning on it, though. Like, you know, you need people like yourself to hopefully make change so it doesn't happen again. So these trucks don't just able to drive down outside someone's house and make a man like that again.
Thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's have a look at the weather next.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Well, heatwave conditions will briefly return for some over the next few days and it'll be largely dry, but the weekend will bring changes. Expect a mainly dry morning with long sunny spells for most, but northern and eastern parts will see more cloud. Scotland and northeast England will be quite grey with drizzly outbreaks possible. It'll become warm to very warm with light winds. The afternoon looks brighter across more of northern Britain, but a few showers are likely there. Meanwhile, Donegal and parts of Northern Ireland will turn dull and damp. Elsewhere, it'll be largely fine into the evenings. That's your weather.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
Coming up, we're talking police vetting. We'll be joined by His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary, Lee Freeman.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Middle East correspondent. We've just entered Gaza. The vista out there is complete destruction. I'll always remember going into Gaza City during the war. All around us was destruction and the sounds of battle. I witnessed the scars of the October the 7th attacks, burnt out homes, bullet holes in walls and bloodstains on the floor.
People were murdered, people were kidnapped.
The Israelis insist that many of these prisoners are terrorists, but here the Palestinians consider them a blend of freedom fighters and political prisoners. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Okay, there's a lot of firing going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, sir.
Let's go. Watch, wait, right. We're going to get in. Right. Get in. Get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them, quite often, is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Whoa. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera. Turn around and go away.
Okay, but
listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw 2 guys, 2 bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
But that is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
I will always remember the atmosphere at the Shanghai protests. It was an electric mix of excitement, fear, and defiance, and a sense that history was being made.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Welcome back. Well, the US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth was heckled as he gave evidence to the US Senate over whether Donald Trump should be granted additional funds for the war.
Stop bombing our children in Iran and Palestine. This is illegal.
Mr. Secretary, please suspend until order is restored in the hearing room. We will begin the time.
Protesters held up photos of Iranian children, thought to be among the 156 people killed when a primary school in the city of Minab was bombed at the start of the war. Some of them could be heard shouting, "Stop bombing our children in Iran and Palestine. This is illegal." Our US correspondent James Matthews has more.
Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth and Dan Kane, chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, they're the two men at the top of the US military prosecuting the Iran war. There is a question for them and for their ultimate boss, the president, that won't go away. It's about the school bombing at Minab in Iran. Sky News has established US responsibility. A security insider has told us that human error was responsible and that Trump denials are undermining transparency in terms of establishing publicly who was behind it. It's a question we at Sky News will continue to ask, and I asked it of Pete Hegseth and of General Kane. Secretary Hegseth, are you hiding the truth, sir, over the Minab school bombing? Are you hiding the truth? This session on Capitol Hill, it was the top brass asking for more cash. They need it to maintain the Iran war effort. Pete Hegseth called it an urgent, necessary injection of funds. That's how he framed it. They were giving evidence to senators, but not before they were disrupted by protesters inside the room. There were a number who were there disrupting proceedings. Ultimately, they were led away. Kane and Hegseth, of course, they're two men who used to appear regularly before the media, but they haven't since May, nor have they appeared before senators. So this was an opportunity for those senators to interrogate the war, the plan, the exit strategy, casualties, which are increasing, including US service personnel. A chance for senators to ask what they are getting for their money at a time when political opposition is stiffening. It becomes more acute in Congress as costs grow, and so does the casualty count. In the list of concerns on Capitol Hill, there is Minab, and there is much more.
James Matthews there for us. Now, a new report says the Met Police has improved its response to misconduct and removed more than 1,500 people considered unfit for policing. But the police inspectorate says there's still work to do to improve vetting, professional standards and intelligence on anti-corruption.
So we're joined now by His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary, Lee Freeman. Good to have you with us. Just talk us through what have you found?
The inspection is part of the National Voting Programme, where we inspect all 43 forces in England and Wales on their vetting, counter-corruption and professional standards. The report has found that the Metropolitan Police Service has invested in its integrity arrangements. You're correct to say that over 1,500 people in the last 3 years who shouldn't be working in police in the Metropolitan Police are now not. So it is an improved picture, but the force does need to do more to make sure only the right people can join and remain in the service. For example, it needs to make sure that all non-police personnel, such as many contractors and volunteers in the stations across London, have the correct vetting clearance to have access to those stations. We also highlighted how it handles public complaints to make sure it needs to be in line with statutory guidance, particularly those complaints that come in via its contact centre needs to improve, and particularly around how it improves intelligence and the use of intelligence to help prevent corruption, specifically around gifts hospitalities that are given to officers and staff, but also those officers and staff who may have secondary employment or volunteering roles to understand any risks that might be associated with that. So it's an improving picture. I think it's reflective of the priority that the Commissioner has given to this area of business in the last 3 years under his leadership, but we do highlight that there is some areas that it still needs to improve in order to get to the grades that I'm sure it wishes to achieve.
When we sort of pause and think about the initial major problems in the lack of vetting at the Met that Baroness Casey and others identified, have you got to the bottom any further in this report as to precisely what caused that big surge in it? Was it short-term targets for hiring police officers or lack of funding and political mistakes, or Met-specific mistakes?
So our inspections specifically looked at what we found when we've gone in relation to rectifying that, as opposed to going down to the root cause analysis. That's not our role. But from our perspective, it is really clear that the force has invested considerably in its integrity arrangements as a result of some of the cases that you've highlighted, and removing many people who shouldn't be working in policing. Pleasingly, we have found that because of those investments, personnel in the Force Vetting Unit are now well trained. They have enough capacity to deal with what is significant demand. Over 47,500 people working in the Metropolitan Police require some sort of vetting and assessment on an ongoing arrangement. And those officers and staff within the vetting unit we found are well led. There's good governance and there's good review mechanisms. The challenge for the force moving forward now is about ensuring that consistency across all areas. The bar is really high in this inspection in relation to that, because obviously the risks are significant, and a single officer or member of staff who has access to police systems or indeed carries a warrant card, we know the harm that individual can cause, and that's why we're still asking for requires improvement, and I will be speaking to the Commissioner over the coming months to make sure that is progressed.
There's two people who I just always remember when it comes to the vetting, in the Met. And the first is David Carrick, one of the UK's worst sex offenders. He got his job despite an allegation of domestic abuse, and also Cliff Mitchell, who carried out, 50 sex attacks. And again, there was a previous rape allegation against him. Are we at a stage where if there are any allegations, someone just shouldn't be joining the Met?
Most of the police workforce are entirely dedicated to serving the public, and cases such as Carrick and Cousins are thankfully extremely rare. What I can say is that the Metropolitan Police Service has invested considerably in these arrangements and has removed a significant number of people who shouldn't be working in policing. But as I've already said, one police officer shouldn't be serving as one too many and can cause a lot of harm. This is why our inspections across all force performance in these vital areas of business is inspected in the way that we do. We aim to identify good practice, but more importantly, we're here to report to the public on progress. The message to the communities of London this morning who will be listening to this programme and watching the news is that the Commissioner has started to make progress and things are in a much stronger place. But there is still more work to do, and that will be something that we will be reporting on in the coming months.
Thank you very much indeed. Good to have you on the programme today.
We did get the statement from the Met. We're grateful for this report from His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary, which reflects the significant progress we've made in delivering higher standards, overhauling vetting and tackling corruption. We've consistently acknowledged that transforming our culture is not something we can achieve overnight. We are partway through this 5-year journey and expect to see further significant progress as we continue our work to create a Met that Londoners deserve.
A couple more stories to bring you today. This is from Born Free, the charity, and they found that over 2,200 dangerous wild animals, and we're talking about big cats, we're talking about venomous snakes, we're even talking about crocodiles, have been kept as pets.
Unbelievable.
Crocodile in the garden,
cobra,
in the pond.
A cobra. I mean, I can see why you might ignorantly buy a cat that grows bigger than... I mean, I'm not really
a mini
seeing
lion cub, and then...
But who wants a cobra?
Yeah, so the wildlife charity Born Free are now calling for an overhaul of the legislation around this. They're saying that the kind of Dangerous Wild Animals Act isn't fit for purpose. The licences don't guarantee, for example, appropriate living conditions for these animals as well. So it's a
Are you allowed to have one?
Thing too. I have no idea, I'll be totally honest. I don't know. But they're urging the government to review and reform to prevent harm, close loopholes, strengthen enforcement and uphold animal standards.
I'd support that
Yeah.
update. I didn't know you were allowed to have them.
Imagine if you found out your neighbours have got a cobra.
Be almost as bad as having a massive pile of rubbish in your backyard.
Yes, it's true. We also wanted to say as well, because there's been another country that has moved to ban social media for teenagers, and it is France.
And they're banning it slightly stricter than the proposals here or the decisions in Australia. Children under 15 will be blocked from creating accounts from September. I mean, we really are seeing just a big global shift on this.
Yeah.
You know, I think without that much pushback, I think, even from the big tech companies. Obviously, that I haven't read all the French statements in relation to it, but here they all make statements, but there's not that same uproar that you might have feared there was.
Yeah, and I think there's something about safety numbers as well. Like, if a lot of countries do this, then you would imagine that the tech companies who are doing all this incredible stuff with AI can, I would assume, pretty quickly work to find age verification stuff or certain websites that are allowed, others that aren't on Apple phones or whatever it is, to try and move towards it. And, yeah, of course, we're looking ahead to the UK bringing its own.
I still can't believe you're potentially allowed to have a cobra. What if your neighbour came... Just want to let you guys know, we've lost the cobra, so just keep your eyes peeled. What?
Let us know, by the way. Warnings at Sky.
What, if you've got a pet cobra?
If you've got a pet cobra, Wilf wants to have a word with you.
Well, no, I don't. I want to stay as far away as possible.
Well, clear. We need to find out if it is actually legal to keep a cobra. Maybe it is illegal and they're just ignoring it.
We'll be right back with all the day's top news.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond. You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Good morning. It is 8 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Rich and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilf, a very good morning from me as well.
Andy Burnham pledges to cap single bus fares at £2 as new figures reveal the scale of the cost of living challenge.
Sky News reveals the serious health risks posed by the UK's largest illegal waste dumps.
Inflation eases to 2.6%, but economists say it could be the last good news for a while. We'll tell you about our new economic pressure tracker to help keep you on top of household finances.
Also ahead, 2 of PC Andrew Harper's killers may be eligible for early release under plans to ease prison overcrowding.
And there are calls for a change in the law because people are keeping big cats, cobras, and even crocodiles as pets across the country.
Good morning. We've got the second big policy announcement from the new Prime Minister. Single bus fares will be capped at £2 from January. It means the maximum fare will be cut by a third, which Andy Burnham says is all about giving people more breathing space.
And there is new money for it as well, £454 million in total, most of it funded by reallocating money from the Department for Energy and Net Zero for international climate projects. And of course, it also comes a day after Andy Burnham said he was scrapping VAT on electricity bills.
Well, Alex is here to tell us a bit more about this. So what are the details of this announcement?
So single fares for buses will be capped at £2. This is from January next year. And this is kind of reversing. So the cap was first imposed in 2023 and then it rose to £3 at the start of 2025. So as you were saying, the funding from this is coming from reprioritising the energy budget, so kind of changing how money is being spent. And so if you were talking to Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary, so my understanding from that was that the money that would go to these climate projects abroad as grants will now be loaned, so they have to be paid back to the government. And I think there's questions over whether they can add interest to that, although she did say we're not looking to fleece anybody. So I think Andy Burnham here really highlighting the cost of living, really wanting to, I think, show a real change from how Starmer began his government, which, if you remember, was with the winter fuel cut, and highlighting a £22 billion black hole, that everything was really bad, all the doom and gloom, which I think, made the government unpopular early on. And here Andy Burnham's coming in. He wants to project good feeling with these cost of living policies, bus fare caps and the VAT cut as well.
It's kind of mad that we were going to give £450 million to an overseas project in the first... I mean, look, I guess that's probably stating the obvious, but I think people will be quite surprised and probably pleased that it's going to go on bus fares instead.
I mean, a lot of people are going to be really pleased by it, let's be honest. Some people will look at it and be like, this is bad, look at how hot everything's getting, we need to support rainforests, and we need to fulfil our international obligations. So we'll split opinion, but Andy Burnham, as you have to do as a politician, is picking a side, and he wants to prioritise the pound in people's pockets, bus fares, energy bills. Right? It's
going to split opinion, but I don't think it's going to be a 50-50 split.
I think that's fair.
I think
80-20.
One of the criticisms of Labour from the Tories and even from the public really is that people are struggling here. And not enough is being done to help people here. But you will also get voices, maybe those close to Ed Miliband or generally supportive of the Green Agenda, saying that this watering down progressively of the importance of net zero is going to be damaging overall to us as well.
Ed Miliband conveniently is in the Philippines on his first international engagement as Foreign Secretary at the ASEAN Summit, the Southeast Asian Summit.
Can't get much in the Philippines, can we?
Slipping out there when he's not here. That's what I mean, yeah.
Can't doorstep him today.
Every time Ed Miliband goes on a foreign trip, there'll be a quick little watered-down net zero announcement.
Yeah,
and I hope he doesn't notice.
You see it happening. Thanks so much indeed, Alex. Good to have you with us.
Now, the latest inflation figures have been published this morning by the Office for National Statistics, easing to 2.6% in June. That's down from 2.8% in May. The forecast was for 2.7%.
And we have got a new tool to try and make sense of it all. It's a new economic pressure tracker. Paul Calso is here to tell us what it's all about.
Yeah, it's inflation figures today. We're quite used to bringing you those on a monthly basis from the Office for National Statistics. We've got a new tool for not just looking at inflation, but a lot of the numbers underneath it. The numbers that go into the global markets that influence prices here at home. We're calling it the Economic Pressure Tracker. You can find it on our app and on our website. I'm going to have a little run through here on a version we've got fixed up for TV. This is the inflation number we've been talking about. Consumer price inflation for the Office for National Statistics. It's the number for June. Inflation looks backwards, and you see it fell 2.6% from 2.8%. Now, the two biggest drivers of that, number one, has been fuel prices. So let's take a look at petrol. We've got petrol prices here. Now, you see they're going up in July, but look here, this is the June run. Remember, it's a backward-looking number, inflation. Petrol prices were indeed falling. Have a quick look at diesel, which had the biggest spike in prices after the start of the attacks on Iran. It was also falling in June. Another factor dragging down inflation, you might be surprised here, is food inflation. This is from the British Retail Consortium, not the Office of National Statistics, but again, shows food prices were indeed on the decline May into June. So that gives you a bit of a look at the underlying reasons for that inflation figure. We can go a level down from that. We were talking about fuel prices there. We can look at the energy markets that underpin those. Let's take a look at crude oil. This is the Brent crude price. You can see the US-Israeli attacks on Iran begin. Oil prices go up. Again, they were falling in June, which is good news. Now actually back up above $90, which is a warning light for the global economy. That's about the uncertainty in the Strait of Hormuz. Let's have a look at the Strait of Hormuz. We've got a section dedicated to this because this is about global economic stress. Let's look at the Strait of Hormuz, transits through the Strait of Hormuz. We got very familiar with talking about this when the war began. Those hundreds of ships every day, well, they went to almost none. It was effectively closed. They have picked up a bit ever since that nascent peace deal. We don't even know if it still applies. So there were more vessels tracking. Well, we can show you how many are tracking in and out of the Strait every day. 22 in and 30 out on our most recent number. More helpful to understand what's happening to prices here at home is what kind of ships are they? We can show you week-on-week changes in vessels by type. There's gas carriers. That's really important to our energy prices. But the one for fuel prices is crude oil tankers. So we see a decline in the last week in crude oil tankers going out. If we get these numbers back up towards the pre-war norms, well, you might start to see those oil prices falling. There's plenty more here to look at. I mentioned food inflation. That's affected by global food commodity prices. There are many here. We've got wheat, we've got dairy. Let's have a look. That influences milk and cheese. Look, it was falling. That helps explain why prices in the supermarket are not going up quite as fast, still rising, but not as fast as we saw before. And I'll end with the underlying economic data, interest rates. What does this inflation number do to the path of interest rates? It's expected to stay flat where it's been since the war began. But the start of the war raised a question, was that path of declining rates halted? Are they going to start going up again? We'll find out later this year. And the one they'll be watching most closely in the Treasury, probably gilt yields. This is a proxy for the cost of borrowing. How much does it cost for the government to borrow? How much faith in there is the economic plans of this new administration? A little rise in the last few days. That's mirrored across many economies. That's got more to do with what's going on in the Gulf. But perhaps John Healy and Andy Burnham will be taking a little look at our economic pressure tracker to see how they're doing. You certainly can look at our app, look at our website, and we'll be using it here on screen as applicable.
I was going to say, and this is now live on our website for everyone to go on and play with.
Absolutely. It's been put together by the data and forensics team. You see there's about 20-odd different data sources there. Hopefully we've got the power to add. There's a world of data out there that underpins what we feel in our pockets and the experience we have, lived experience in the UK, but it also influences policy hugely. So hopefully this will be really useful.
That's your afternoon sorted, Wilf?
It certainly is. Yeah, the rest of my
Look out, his mornings
weekend.
too, I think so.
Yeah, exactly.
Paul, great stuff. Thanks so much.
We've been talking about toxic waste dumping on the programme, and I have to say, it is unbelievable. These massive mountains of rubbish that's been getting a lot worse in recent years as well, sites, pretty much across the country. We know it causes damage, of course, to property, harms communities and impacts the environment, but that is really just scratching the surface of the damage that it's doing. So Sky's done a 6-month investigation working with scientists, and we've been testing samples from soil, water and air in 3 different sites, and I have to say, the findings are pretty worrying. Dan Whitehead has been investigating. Let's have a look.
Okay, well, there's a lot of smoke.
Yeah, you can smell it as well. It's a very strong sort of plasticky smell.
On the edge of Gloucester, 100,000 tonnes of waste has been building up. Illegally dumped, it's so big, it regularly sets on fire.
For years now, we have been investigating the growing number of illegal waste sites across the country. During that time, the rubbish has been festering, leaching into water, literally burning in to the countryside air. Over the last 6 months, we've been working with a team of scientists to try and uncover what this rubbish is made up of and potentially what harm it's causing.
We've tested the air, water and soil at 3 of the country's largest illegal waste sites. Here in Gloucester, in Ranskill near Doncaster and up in Wigan, a dump that sits in the constituency of the new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham. Collectively, they make up more than 170,000 tonnes of waste. And after months of analysis, the results are in.
How significant, how worrying are the things that you've found?
In short, very worrying. The bottom line is, here we have seen, by our identification process, hundreds of compounds which are of a concern that if you inhale them, certainly if you inhale them over a period of time, could well have significant health effects.
Hidden in the smoke in Gloucester, we found matches for 763 different chemicals. It is a huge number. A toxic mix that is 4 times higher than what you'd breathe in from a car exhaust. Among them, names such as styrene, ethylbenzene, chlorobenzene and naphthalene. All can cause breathing difficulties, burning eyes and nausea, with long-term exposure linked to neurological problems. The village of Hynham lies just half a mile from these burning fumes. The smell often drifts over, and last summer a large fire at the dump meant kids at the primary school had to stay indoors.
I just think it's absolutely shocking because it's very close to a big community and there are several local schools in the area, and just to think that that is what you're breathing in and you're completely unaware of it, the government are just turning a blind eye to it.
Our results are no less worrying up north. In Doncaster, there was a strong match for a chemical called carbon tetrachloride, so toxic it's phased out globally with links to cancer. In Wigan, a possible ID for Demetin O, a pesticide that's banned in the UK. Our samples were taken at source, and there are now urgent calls for further tests to understand just how far these dangerous compounds are travelling.
Some of the strongest science which has come out is about how very low-level chemical exposures in populations over the long term have health effects which nobody predicted they would have. There is no argument that you should ignore this and hope the problem goes away.
We presented all of our evidence to the government, and in response, the Environment Agency says its own scientists are now carefully considering our findings. It added that it's made 18 arrests linked to illegal waste dumps since April this year.
Contaminated water posing a risk to wildlife, fumes in the air causing fear amongst locals. Our results show dangers that may be hidden in plain sight. Dan Whitehead, Sky News.
Dan's here. I just can't actually stop talking about this. I can't actually believe that these sites exist. What was it like being there? What was the smell like?
I mean, the Gloucester site is particularly remarkable because you walk up a path which is behind a farm shop, a kid's sort of farm play area, probably sort of a couple of 100 metres away from it. They can smell it there in the summer and stuff. And you walk onto this field, and it's a vast sort of field, and you look down and it's sort of processed, sort of shredded building material. And then it's only when you get sort of 500 metres to the edge of the field that you look down and it's a 10-metre drop.
Wow.
And you if you look on Google Maps where you're stood, there's meant to be trees, and there were a few years ago. And you realise, oh, this is 10 metres high, and that's why at that site it self-combusts. It's so condensed that you're there and there'll be like a pocket of flame and smoke bursting out, and that's where we've tested and found, all these horrific, dangerous chemicals. But it's remarkable to be there, and the smell is really bad.
Oh.
The way that these sites built up is also what is so striking, that you can't intervene once the first 2 trucks arrive, and presumably on all of these sites someone locally complained someone's dumping rubbish, but nothing is done before it's become this extraordinarily large dumping ground?
Well, it's almost a problem. It's too late once it's a big problem, because people, sometimes they're in industrial areas. Very often, you look at Kidlington in Oxford, you look at Hodes Wood, really big sites. They're in very remote areas. The one in Doncaster, these criminal gangs behind it had ploughed through a road, through a forest, out of sight, out of mind, and the gang had hired a couple of guys in high vis as the lorries were coming in, saying it's, building development and so forth. It is very sophisticated. This is beyond what people might see when they see a mattress tipped around the corner in a fridge freezer. This is a different level of organised criminal gangs.
I was just looking at the images of that site, and it has made me think a lot about how we dispose of our rubbish, right, as a nation, because I think everyone's seen, if you want to get rid of a mattress or a sofa, there are lots of people who will take that for a fee, and I can imagine that goes there. But if you're looking at some of those images, a lot of it just looks like bin bags. I mean, is this kind of companies and stuff like that, or what? I mean, where's this waste coming from?
I think the problem with the waste industry in this country is it's sort of clouded in, false information, and no one really knows what happens to your waste once it goes. A lot of it goes to waste processing plants. That's a chain in between landfill, if stuff has to go for landfill. We obviously try to avoid that now. If it has to go to landfill, which stuff has to, sometimes we have obviously stuff that has to go to landfill, they charge £126 per tonne of that. So, you look at 100,000 tonnes at Gloucester, you can see the money that can be made. So there's a question as to whether or not that needs to be reduced in price, whether or not that would actually, not create an incentive for the criminals to do it is another question as well. The Environment Agency is trying to tackle this. Their scientists are now looking at our findings from this report, but they're starting testing later this year of digital tracking so that they know where waste is going. Whether or not it's enough, it's a department which arguably is underfunded. They're getting an extra £45 million this year, but, the Wigan site, which is going to be cleared up, as our resident Nisha told us a while ago, back in October, that's costing around £10 million. Wow. Kidlington, around that price, and that's taxpayers who are having to pay it.
Dan Whitehead, sorry.
Yeah, makes you sick.
Yeah, great stuff. Dan, thanks very much. Watch this full report on the YouTube channel now.
And now Labour MPs have formed a group to hold the new Prime Minister to one of his key pledges, the reindustrialisation of the UK.
The group is calling for a target of 1 million new jobs to try and revitalise the country's industrial sector and stimulate economic growth. Joining us now is the Labour MP for Rossendale and Darwen, Andy McNay, who's also convened the new reindustrialisation research group of Labour MPs and joins us today. Andy, it was good to see you. It was good to see you the other week when we were waiting to see how the Cabinet shaped up. Have you been satisfied with the shape of it?
Yeah. I mean, it's some really interesting choices there, and I think it brings together sort of talents from across the party. So I think it's an exciting moment.
You are wanting to see more reindustrialisation. I mean, listening to Andy Burnham's speech when he talked about basically just that on the doors of Downing Street, you're pushing an open door, aren't you?
Well, it's always nice, but I think what we want to be clear about is how reindustrialisation needs to make sense for every part of the country. I mean, Andy talks about good jobs in every postcode, quite rightly, and so that's what we have to deliver. But we also have to do it with a sense of scale and ambition, which is why we're talking about 1 million new jobs as a target. That would make a difference in every part of the country. And there's a lot of work to be done, frankly, to develop the policies and interventions and structures to deliver that. So we want to support Andy in doing that by bringing together talent, ability and experience from across the whole party, and also drawing in that from outside government as well.
Is it fair to say we can't realistically reindustrialise at scale without much lower energy costs?
It is. That's a crucial part of the factor. It's one of many, and this is the thing. There are a lot of things we have to get right if we're going to do this properly. We have to recognise that many governments have tried to reindustrialise. We've had many industrial strategies, and so there's a lot of things we need to get right, and we need to be big and bold in doing that.
We talked about the Cabinet at the beginning of the interview. Anyone in particular that you were pleased to see? What about John Healey as Chancellor?
That's really interesting. I think John is a very experienced, very sort of pragmatic, practical politician. That's great. I was actually really pleased, I think, to see Chris MacDonald as Industry Minister is still there. I think he's excellent and has been really leading on pushing reindustrialisation from well before Andy Burnham joined. So, again, there's some really good people there.
One thing Andy Burnham has said he intends to do is to make sure he really engages with you, with the Parliamentary Labour Party and the MPs. Is it something you think Keir Starmer failed to do?
I think Keir started to try and do it over the last year, recognised the importance of that. There wasn't nearly enough of that in the first year. That is true, and I think he probably regrets that now. But Andy has started off, he's done what he said. He's already held meetings with hundreds of MPs, backbenchers, and has started that engagement from day one, so that feels very positive.
The other thing that we do seem to be seeing a hint of is the government would call it a reprioritisation of the net zero money. We saw that today with the bus fares. Is that something you are happy to see?
I'm not sure about the phrase reprioritisation of net zero. I think what Andy said is for every department to look at where they can find savings. He's clear about his priority right now, which is cost of living, and we've seen that in the VAT cut, in the bus fare cuts. But he's asked every department to look at what they can save, every department to look at their priorities. And that's an entirely healthy thing to do. And I think within that context, we've got to recognise that the whole energy economy, the net zero economy, is hugely important to the UK. It's worth something like 105 billion across the country, supports over 1 million jobs. So that in itself is a vital cog in reindustrialisation.
Just to come in, reprioritisation is a word in the press release for the bus fare pledge. They're saying it comes from a reprioritisation of the Department for Energy and Net Zero's budget on these international climate finance projects.
Yes, that's a specific international climate projects. But I think the thing is, Andy's asked every department to look at their spending commitments, their priorities, and align with this crucial focus on cost of living.
OK, great to have you on the programme. Thank you very much for coming on again.
Thank you.
Now, two of the men jailed for killing police officer Andrew Harper may be eligible for early release under the government's controversial scheme to ease overcrowding in prisons.
PC Harper died on duty. He was dragged down a country road behind a car while responding to a burglary, and his mother has described the situation as an insult.
Barnaby's here with all of the details and can remind us about the very sad case as well in the first place.
Yeah, Andrew Harper was just 28 years old when he died. He'd been married for about a month. When he was responding to a quad bike theft, as you said, he got his leg caught in a strap, trailed by a getaway car driven by 3 teenagers, and he died. And those teenagers were later jailed for manslaughter. And we've learned over the last 24 hours that 2 of them, Jesse Cole and Albert Bowers, might be eligible for early release. So they'll be released after serving half of a 13-year sentence. Now, this all relates to some new sentencing laws which are coming into force in September, which will mean that some people convicted of serious crimes will be able to get out of prison after serving half a sentence rather than 2/3 of a sentence, which is what it was previously. That was brought in to deal with massive overcrowding in prisons, the government running out of prison space, but it is being described as an insult by the family of PC Andrew Harper. His mother, Debbie Adlam, has spoken to The Telegraph. We've got a few lines from her to bring you. She said, "It makes me feel sick. Andrew's life doesn't get to come back. It feels like a slap in the face and an insult. Any reduction makes a mockery of sentencing. It's a gift for prisoners to be let out early. The cost is to us, the victims, and then the public." Her concerns have been echoed by the Police Federation, who've pointed out that police officers across the country were deeply shocked by what happened to Andrew Harper. They've called it disgusting. The Ministry of Justice sympathises, obviously, with Andrew Harper's family, but is pointing out that this has been brought in to deal with that massive overcrowdings. The spokesperson for the Ministry of Justice has told us that this was a horrific crime. Our deepest sympathies are with PC Andrew Harper's family and friends. In 2024, the country was facing a prison crisis and a total breakdown of law and order, with judges ordered to stop jailing dangerous criminals. This government is committed to public safety. We are building prison places at the fastest rate since the Victorian era and taking the difficult decisions needed to lock up the most dangerous offenders. So the MOJ, I think, making clear there that this is a policy that has been brought in order to jail more people, because you have to have the spaces to put them. But it's deeply upsetting to the family of Andrew Harper, who think that his killers should be in prison for their whole sentences.
Barnaby, thanks so much.
Let's take a look now, shall we, at some of the morning's other stories, because the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, has sacked his military chief, General Alexander Syrskyi.
The decision follows protests against an earlier decision to dismiss Mikhailo Fedorov from the head of the Defence Ministry, and we're going to talk to Deborah about all of that next hour.
Prosecutors say that the former MP Anne Widdecombe was hit on the head 21 times with a hammer before she was found dead at her home in Devon.
The court heard that the former Tory minister had been eating lunch when the suspect, 28-year-old Joshua Kerry, allegedly attacked her. He's been charged with her murder and remanded into custody with a provisional trial date listed for June next year.
A judge in Florida has ruled Donald Trump must hand over detailed financial records as part of his defamation lawsuit against the BBC.
The US president is suing the corporation over an episode of Panorama that edited together different sections of his speech on the day of the US Capitol riot, which appeared to show Trump urging his supporters to take violent action.
The Thames Water hosepipe ban is set to kick in from midnight tonight. It will affect over 10 million customers and has been enforced after an exceptionally warm and dry summer.
Under the ban, hosepipes should not be used to water gardens, lawns or allotments, which includes the use of sprinklers.
Right, I mean, one of the massive films out at the minute is The Odyssey. The blockbuster film adaptation of Homer's Odyssey has led to a spike in sales of the book.
University of Pennsylvania professor Emily Wilson's translated book, which was released in 2017, has seen a 40% rise in sales. I can't imagine non-translated ones have surged that much, but
that would be a real...
Going to see it this week. Looking forward to it.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's got great reviews, hasn't it? It's been
fantastic reviews, because there was a lot of questions beforehand, because whether people were a bit upset on some of the casting stuff or whatever. But since it's come out, I mean, I haven't seen any negative review. Everyone's five-starring it across the board. Say it's one of Christopher Nolan's best, if not his best.
Yeah.
The cast is epic, by the way. I mean, I don't exactly know who's got what roles, but big names, and everything Christopher Nolan does, incredible.
And also, I mean, my guide on this is Tom Holland, not the actor who's in the film, by the way, but Tom Holland, the historian, who is really into, I mean, makes it sound flippant, but like he's such an expert on all the classics and Odyssey, and he's raved about it, so that's good enough for me.
Yeah, it's a long one, though. Well, I think it's 3 hours plus, isn't it?
I mean, that's just too long.
Except that everyone said it's fantastic. Is there any Christopher Nolan movie that isn't quite long, but also still brilliant?
I mean, I don't know anything about movies, so name me some Christopher Nolan movies.
Oppenheimer, Interstellar.
Awful, Oppenheimer, too long, definitely, and boring.
You have seen it?
I saw it. Well, I actually gave up halfway through, so it was too long.
Wow.
Sorry.
He did the Batman trilogy with Christian Bale. Fantastic.
I actually did think Oppenheimer was... Someone needed to take at least an hour-long edit to that, I reckon.
I mean, it was quite long, but it was good. This one is apparently excellent, so anyway, off to see it on Thursday. Having said that, when you go to a long movie and you've been getting up at 3:30 all week, I do have a little bit of the... during the movie.
We'll find out if you manage to get through without falling asleep.
Also, if I've had too much wine during the movie as well, it doesn't help.
Risky. Coming up next, we are going to be speaking to the Children's Commissioner, Dame Rachel D'Souza, about some inequalities faced by students during the school holidays.
hear that whistle and that crunch. We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury.
I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Welcome back. The Children's Commissioner has warned that tens of thousands of disabled children, particularly from low-income families, are missing out on free school holiday activities.
And actually it's because a lot of the activities are too far away, they're inaccessible, or they lack the kind of support that children with these additional needs need. Well, we can talk now to the Children's Commissioner. Dame Rachel D'Souza joins us now. It's such a long stretch to the school holidays, isn't it? And it matters so much for kids.
Look, I mean, it's the school holidays. I've been out there with the talking to children. I've been hiking with the Scouts down on Brownsea Island. I've been in disabled playgrounds and with Bournemouth Football Club, with the Down syndrome football team, and having a great time. But you're absolutely right. Teenagers, particularly older teenagers with disabilities, are saying, we're not getting access. We got the figures from the Holiday and Food Programme. There's this great programme, Holiday and Food Programme, where children get free summer activities. And we would I wonder, because the disabled kids are really concerned. So we had a look, and it's only a third who should be going are going. So, and what they're saying is basically, to get a disabled kid to one of these things is you've got to think about transport, you've got to think about the kind of one-to-one support they might need. But when it works so well. I was looking at disabled Down syndrome yoga in London recently, and the kids were having a fantastic time and the parents were happy. And what parents need this support more than the parents of disabled kids, who are often heroes?
It's such a big thing, isn't it? And, if I think about all the amazing holiday activities that are on offer, tennis or swimming or whatever it is, but quite often these are run by really small providers, right? It could just be a one-man band. How are you going to help them put on stuff that's going to make it...
Yeah, so I think we need a bit of a... I think there's a couple of things. I think we need a bit of a joined-up approach. So government gives the holiday and food money to the providers, and I think they need to say, right, we want to make sure, we're going to count how many disabled kids go. We want to make sure they get a chance to go. So ring-fence some of that money and actually support providers who will do that. So there's some practical things there, and I've seen such good practice, so it can be done. But also, I want the councils to have a think as well, because, I was in playgrounds in Bournemouth and with a whole special school full of kids, and they were like, if only the roundabout was sunken, then we could get the wheelchair on there, or if only the chairs were the swings were the right size. We want to go on the swings, but it's really hard to lift us onto there. So if the councils just put a bit of thought into how to do those playgrounds, that's all kids want. They want to go around and have a bit of fun, kick a football, go on the roundabout. I bet you did, Wilf, didn't you? Enjoyed that.
Of course. Yeah. And as you say, it's a joyous thing for the kids to enjoy. Is it the council's fault in that it just takes a little bit of extra thought and planning, or are they short on, some of this, I'm sure the solutions would cost extra funding?
Well, what I've picked up, and again, I've been all around the country talking to children everywhere, doing my Big Future survey. We've had about 620,000 responses, and I've looked at all the disabled children's responses. And what children are saying and what parents are saying is that councils aren't talking to them enough. If when they were planning these things, and there are some fab parks around the country, they actually thought about asking the parents of disabled children when they were doing their planning what would really work, rather than, what does some architect tell me? We might get some better responses, because it's often very simple things. Instead of the roundabout being above ground, have it below ground so you can put a wheelchair onto it.
I mean,
costs nothing.
And also safer for all kids as well, to be honest.
Yes.
They're like death traps, some of those roundabouts.
And everyone loves the swings, you know, that they... And another big thing, I think, is everyone needs to have a little think about older teenagers, both older teenagers with disabilities and all older teenagers are like, you want us off our phones, but actually we want places to go out where we don't get shooed away because we're too old and we're too, you know, they want fun things to do as well as the sport. But, I mean, the football club's doing a great job. I was up with Liverpool Football Club week before last at the start of the holidays with the work experience kids. And, I mean, they are, those young people, you know, they had messages for the new Prime Minister. They were like, don't forget about us. Don't forget about us, kids from Liverpool.
Let's talk about the new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, because you worked with him pretty closely, right? What do you think of him?
Yeah, so when he was the mayor, I was the independent chair, I'm always independent chair of his Attendance Alliance, and I brought together health, education, children's social care to try to get everyone focused on getting the kids back to school. And he backed it. And why did he back it? Because it's local. And what I'm really interested in is we hear lots of rhetoric up in Westminster. I want to see Andy Burnham actually deliver on real local, getting everyone together, getting the services right. Delivery is very different from policy up in Westminster.
Can I ask a question about the social media ban? Because obviously that was something that was announced late in the Starmer government. I'm actually not quite sure where we got to on actually delivering or enforcing it. But I guess the key question to really see it go forward will be, does Andy Burnham pick it up and see it through? Have we got any indication on that?
So I think I recall that he spoke in favour of a ban. What I'd like him to do is, because on the steps of Downing Street, he mentioned children and he mentioned education. And I want him to keep that theme at the top of his head and to be saying, how can we protect the children? I'm going to support this ban, but I'm going to do a bit more as well. But I want to see him communicate with the young people and listen to the young people. And that's what my job is, to take those voices to him so that he doesn't sort of need to... He actually is understood by the kids. I mean, the children in Liverpool were like, you know, tell Andy not to forget us. And, you know, we want to build a better community. And we want to see that. We want to see that all around the country. Kids off their phones, out playing, doing their sport, football, work experience. That's what we want for summer, isn't it? Great summer for everyone.
Absolutely, yeah. Rachel, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, Andy Burnham has made it clear that he'll be addressing the cost of living crisis across the UK.
He's already announced plans to scrap electricity VAT and cap single bus fares at £2, but with an already stretched economy, how is he going to make the numbers add up? This is what Heidi Alexander told me this morning.
The detail will need to be worked out. We wanted to make the announcement today. It's a really big priority for the new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, to help with the everyday cost of living.
Yeah.
And so,
as I
said to you,
just trying to get the details of, because this is.
But Sophie, you will appreciate that I'm not going to sit in your studio and tell you how something will work when the detail hasn't yet been worked through.
I'm really sorry. I'm not.
But the point that I have made to you, and I will repeat, is that in order for loans to actually count towards your ODA budget, your Overseas Development Assistance budget, then the terms on which those loans are given do need to be reasonably favourable to the developing country. We're not wanting to fleece anyone here, and we actually want to maximise the development potential of this money that is available. And so it is in line with what a number of other countries do on international climate
finance. If I could just come in again.
But you'll forgive me.
No, Heidi, I'm
not going to give you the detail because I don't have the detail to give you.
Heidi, if you just spoke in slightly shorter answers, we could have more of a conversation here. The problem, I really don't want to interrupt you, and I understand that completely. But I also want to try and get through some of the things I want to get through in the interview, if that's okay as well.
No problem.
I don't think it's unreasonable, by the way, for asking for detail of the government announcement that you've given to us to talk about today.
And I have given you information. I've set out that the cost of the new money that the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero is giving is £454 million. £54 million of that is an underspend within the existing budget. £400 million is switching the money that was previously going to be given out in grants to climate finance projects in developing countries is now going to be given out in loans, so some of that money comes back in. The precise detail that you're asking me about the nature of interest that would be applied to those loans, I don't have. That information will be worked through. I'd be very happy to come back and speak to you again about it in the future. I think it's right, though, that we look at what the priorities need to be for the country.
Heidi Alexander on the programme, of course, last. Let's speak now to the economist and director of policy at the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, Alfie Sterling. A very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. What do you make about these two announcements over the last 36 hours that the government has made to try and address the cost of living so far?
So I think it's very positive that government is responding in a material way, lowering prices directly. That's positive. Is it enough? I mean, clearly it's not enough, but I think the government would recognise that at the moment as well. So we really need to see what comes beyond this, what comes throughout the rest of this year at the budget and beyond. One of the things we know, that everyone knows at the moment, is that the cost of living crisis hasn't gone away. And what we found today with new research published by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation is that we now have record numbers of families going without essential items. That's 7.4 million households in this country who either are skipping meals, not eating enough, not wearing the right clothes, not able to put the heating on. And that's the highest it's been since in the middle of 2022.
You mentioned there that obviously they're lowering prices. I think yesterday the word mechanically was used in terms of how they're doing that. And you said you want them to go further. Do you want them to go further with those sorts of routes to get lower prices for people, or does there need to be sort of supply-side reform for any more long-term, meaningful attempts to ease prices for people?
No, so ultimately, markets need to be reformed. The supply side needs to be looked at. It's absolutely fundamental. I mean, a number of the key markets, whether it's housing, whether it's energy, whether it's water, are not delivering value for money. People are overpaying for what they are getting, and that needs longer term, more careful and deliberate reform. But there also isn't time. There isn't time for people to wait for that reform to come through. And so government needs to also look at how they provide that relief right now. And there are a number of things that can be done beyond the measures currently instituted. We could be looking at broader energy affordability, looking at the way that Ofgem delivers the unit price cap. We're looking at rents in the private renter sector and making sure they don't reach too far ahead of earnings. I think some of those measures will be particularly important in the months ahead.
Can I ask you about welfare? Because it feels like there is, getting towards a broad political consensus that something needs to be done about the welfare budget. But of course, if you're talking about families in poverty, if you're talking about people struggling with the cost of living, then welfare is absolutely essential to try and tackle that poverty. Where do you think this new government is when it comes to welfare reform, and what should they do?
Yeah, look, I think we've got to be really careful with welfare reform, that we sort of stick to the facts, because there's a lot of sort of pejorative myths out there. So welfare spending is high. That's because need is really high. We've just been talking about some of the reasons for it, because the cost of living is so high. The bit that's actually rising fastest tends to be related to ageing population of people getting less well, and particularly things like the pension age rising means more people just move from pension benefits into disability benefits. It's just moving around the system. So the bill is broadly stable, but it is high. The really key thing is to look at what's pushing people into the situation where they need to rely on the safety net. And that comes from a matter of things. It comes from a number of things. It comes from high prices, trying to sort out those markets, but it also comes from being able to make sure people stay in work and are not losing their jobs. So the security of work and the quality of work is fundamental as well. In the end, it is a false economy to just cut benefit rates, because that makes it harder for people to find work. It pushes people into greater financial distress, makes them less well. And so we need to think about dealing this for the long term, which is about addressing the causes.
Are you concerned then that Pat McFadden is retaining his job as Work and Pension Secretary, given that he has spoken before about the need to get the bill down?
Well, I think we need to see what plans and proposals Pat McFadden brings forward. We're yet to see a number of...
What about if it's the same as what he was doing before? Would that be acceptable?
Well, even there, we haven't seen the Timms review finalised. We don't know what the plan is on a number of these issues. And Pat has talked about a number of different approaches to tackling the issue. Certainly, if this government talks about cutting the rates of benefits for people that absolutely need it right now, we would strongly oppose that. Not just because it causes real distress for people receiving those benefits right now, but almost more importantly because it's just the wrong solution for the problem. In the end, it's a false economy. Costs will pop up elsewhere in the system, whether it's in A&E or other public services.
Thanks so much for joining us, Alfie. Much appreciated.
Many thanks.
Let's have a look at the weather now.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, heatwave conditions will briefly return for some people over the next few days. It will be largely dry, but there's going to be big changes at the weekend. In the meantime, you should expect a mainly dry morning. Long sunny spells for most. Northern and eastern parts will see more clouds. Scotland and northeast England will be quite grey with drizzly outbreaks possible, and it will become warm to very warm with light winds. The afternoon looks brighter across more of northern Britain, but a few showers are likely. Meanwhile, parts of Northern Ireland will turn dull and damp. Elsewhere, it will be largely fine into the evening. Many northern and eastern parts look cloudy overnight. And we're not going to get to the weekend when there are those big changes and try and find out what they're going to be.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
When we come back, we're going to be talking about dangerous animals. Oh, we're doing it now. Sorry.
There you go.
Lucky us.
So this is actually a story that's blown our mind slightly. More than 2,200 dangerous wild animals, and we mean dangerous. We're talking big cats, we're talking cobras, we're talking crocodiles, have been kept as pets.
And like these cats look quite cute. I wouldn't get one, but I can sort, particularly when they're small.
Yeah, you might think, it's a Bengal cat, you know, getting a bit
Simba
big.
the lion, like really cute, until it becomes Mufasa. I know they're different characters, just, you know. The wildlife charity Born Free has called for an overhaul of the 50-year legislation surrounding that does allow. Whereas, you know, would you fall for a baby crocodile?
No, I don't think so.
Cobra?
We have had some helpful viewer emails, including from Ian, who says you can legally own a cobra in the UK, but you must have a special permit called a dangerous wild animal licence. And that is what this charity is actually hoping to toughen up, because they say that actually, you know, the licensing conditions are just not fit for purpose. I'll be honest, if a neighbour had a crocodile, I would be not happy.
I'd actually be more worried about a cobra because it could just sort of get out, you know. Oh gosh, at least you'd probably know if the crocodile had gone missing.
Yeah, but where's it got to?
Well,
stopping it.
Sure, but
it's come out of the pond. Where's it gone? Anyway, not good. But there you go. Coming up, we are going to be talking Iran. The US Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth was repeatedly heckled by protesters as he asked Congress for more funding for the war in Iran.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Middle East correspondent. We've just entered Gaza. The vista out there is complete destruction. I'll always remember going into Gaza City during the war. All around us was destruction and the sounds of battle. I witnessed the scars of the October the 7th attacks, burnt out homes, bullet holes in walls and bloodstains on the floor.
People were murdered, people were kidnapped.
The Israelis insist that many of these prisoners are terrorists, but here the Palestinians consider them a blend of freedom fighters and political prisoners. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Sky News, get the full story first.
going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, eh?
Let's go. Watch, wait. We're going to get in. Right. Get in. Get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them, quite often, is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Whoa. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera. Turn around and go away. Okay, but listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw 2 guys, 2 bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
But that is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
I will always remember the atmosphere at the Shanghai protests. It was an electric mix of excitement, fear, and defiance, and a sense that history was being made.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Welcome back. The US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth was heckled as he gave evidence to the US Senate over whether Donald Trump should be granted additional funds for the war.
Stop bombing our children in Iran and Palestine. This is illegal.
Mr. Secretary, please suspend until...
Protesters there held up photos of Iranian children thought to be among the 156 people who were killed when a primary school in Minab, the city of Minab, was bombed at the beginning of the war. I mean, you can hear it there. People shouting, "Stop bombing our children in Iran and Palestine. This is illegal." Here's James Matthews.
Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth and Dan Kane, chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, they're the 2 men at the top of the US military prosecuting the Iran war. There is a question for them and for their ultimate boss, the president, that won't go away. It's about the school bombing at Minab in Iran. Sky News has established US responsibility. A security insider has told us that human error was responsible and that Trump denials are undermining transparency in terms of establishing publicly who was behind it. It's a question we at Sky News will continue to ask, and I asked it of Pete Hegseth and of General Kane. Secretary Hegseth, are you hiding the truth, sir, over the Minab school bombing? Are you hiding the truth? This session on Capitol Hill, it was the top brass asking for more cash. They need it to maintain the Iran war effort. Pete Hegseth called it an urgent, necessary injection of funds. That's how he framed it. They were giving evidence to senators, but not before they were disrupted by protesters inside the room. There were a number who were there disrupting proceedings. Ultimately, they were led away. Kane and Hegseth, of course, they're 2 men who used to appear regularly before the media, but they haven't since May, nor have they appeared before senators. So this was an opportunity for those senators to interrogate the war, the plan, the exit strategy, casualties, which are increasing, including US service personnel. A chance for senators to ask what they are getting for their money at a time when political opposition is stiffening. It becomes more acute in Congress as costs grow, and so does the casualty count. In the list of concerns on Capitol Hill, there is Minab, and there is much more.
James Matthews there. I do just want to bring you an update on where oil prices have sort of been in the last couple of days in light of the ongoing 11 nights in a row now of US bombing in Iran, because this morning they've just picked up quite a lot. So we're now at 4% this morning. to $94.50 on Brent. A reminder, we got down to 70 when the ceasefire was most in place. So we're markedly higher, back up to the mid-90s now, and it's dragged borrowing costs up as well. So the 10-year borrowing costs here in the UK, sort of firmly above 5%. It's been above 5% all week now, 5.05% now on the 10-year borrowing costs. So, you know, this is definitely an immediate headache for John Healey to have been faced with on the first few days in office.
Yeah, and it feels like there was that optimism that there would be some kind of lasting peace deal. They had that ceasefire, of course, between the US and Iran in June, but since then, it's been, 11 consecutive days of strikes. It doesn't feel like this is something that is about to be resolved. We're
going to have much more on that and the cost of living in the top of the next hour, not just because we got CPI inflation data earlier this morning, but Paul Kelsey will be back with us as well to talk more about this all-new Sky News tool that you can use on the Sky News website and app to track the pressures on domestic finances. We'll be back after this short break with all the day's top stories.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond. You're like, what?
A historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
Sophie and Wilf, good morning from both of us. Thanks for joining us.
Andy Burnham pledges to cap single bus fares at £2 as new figures reveal the scale of the cost of living challenge.
We reveal the serious health risks posed by the UK's largest illegal waste dumps.
Inflation eases to 2.6%, but economists say it could be the last bit of good news for a while. We're going to tell you more about our new Sky News economic pressure tracker as well.
We're also talking about a potential change of ownership at Liverpool Football Club. The Amazon founder Jeff Bezos has apparently been approached by a consortium trying to buy a stake in the club.
Interesting one. We're looking forward to discussing that and calls for a new change in the law amid concerns that big cats, cobras and crocodiles are being kept as pets across the country.
Good morning. We've got the second big policy announcement from the new Prime Minister, and it is that single bus fares are going to be capped at £2 from January. So the maximum fare is going to be cut by a third, and it's all about giving people more breathing space, according to the government.
There's some money for it as well, £450 million funded by reallocating money from the Department for Energy and Net Zero for international climate projects. And it comes a day after Andy Burnham announced he was scrapping VAT on household electricity bills. This morning, Heidi Alexander joined us to talk about the details.
The detail will need to be worked out. We wanted to make the announcement today. It's a really big priority for the new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, to help with the everyday cost of living.
Yeah.
And so,
I understand that.
As I said to you,
just trying to get the details of, because this is.
But Sophie, you will appreciate that I'm not going to sit in your studio and tell you how something will work when the detail hasn't yet been worked through.
I'm really sorry. I'm not.
But the point that I have made to you,
Heidi,
and I will repeat, is that in order for loans to actually count towards your ODA budget, your Overseas Development Assistance budget, then the terms on which those loans are given do need to be reasonably favourable to the developing country. We're not wanting to fleece anyone here, and we actually want to maximise the development potential of this money that is available. And so it is in line with what a number of other countries do on international climate finance.
If I could just come in again.
But you'll forgive me.
No,
Heidi,
I'm not
going to give you the detail because I don't have the detail to give you.
Let's talk to Alex Rogers, shall we? Alex, just talk us through the announcement.
So bus fares, single bus fare journeys in England, outside London, now capped at £2. So I think, this coming after the VAT, scrapping VAT on electricity bills from October, this is Andy Burnham signalling that the cost of living is really going to be at the heart of his government. And this cap, it reverses an increase that was actually put in by Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves. Already, though, there are questions about how it's going to be funded. We heard a bit from the Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, who was saying that this is going to be a reprioritisation of the energy budget. So money that was going to be given to third countries for climate projects as a grant, not having to be paid back, is now going to be given as a loan, which does have to be paid back. And there may be interest on that, although she was quite clear to say that they didn't want to fleece anyone. But I thought it was potentially quite problematic that she came in here and said, oh, well, we've got this announcement, but I can't give you the full detail. I think that might fuel some of the concern around Andy Burnham, that he's all about headlines, all about style and not substance, that maybe the detail hasn't been worked out. And that's what some of his critics fear. How is this all going to be paid for?
Yeah, I mean, I think both yesterday's announcement and today, you can get away with it even if it's not entirely clear exactly how it's going to be paid for, because they're quite small, relatively small kind of costs to the government going forward. So even if it doesn't, if one of these projects, which is now a grant, now a loan rather than a grant, and the recipient doesn't pay it back in 10 years' time, it's probably a bit of a rounding error. But I think the bigger point going forward is the extent to which this trick is repeatable. You can't always just ease the cost of living for people by handing out money to cap prices. It can work around the edges in the short term, but you can't just do that forever.
It feels like the bus fare thing as well, to be fair, is actually the kind of thing that really makes a difference for people too. And I think it's very easy from, a big city like London, where bus fares are already capped and we have a great service, to be kind of flippant about it. But actually, if you rely on a bus to get around in a part of the country where, they are expensive, and a lot of people need it to go to work, it's the kind of thing that I do think would make a difference.
Expensive, and a lot of the services outside of London as well are very irregular. They don't come very often. And I think this is really targeting those on lower incomes. So I think you're right, the reception to it mainly has been that it's a signal of intent. And I do think it is a real contrast to what we had from Keir Starmer when he first got into government, and the language that they used around there being a 22 billion black hole, everything being really bad, doom and gloom, having to make tough choices, cutting the winter fuel. I think Andy Burnham and his new cabinet are acknowledging that, but they're trying to instill a bit of hope and good feeling with these kind of small incremental policies. But as you say, I think the time for them, the honeymoon period is now, and the time to do this is quite limited, and then I think the reality will hit.
We got an email in that I quite enjoyed. This go from John Gray. Good news for residents of the valleys in Cumbria on the price cap. I'm a pensioner with a bus pass. All we need now is a bus, which perhaps goes to your point about, it's kind of the variety of the service as well.
Alex, great stuff. Much appreciated. Clearly, a lot of this has been aimed at tackling the cost of living. And to help you assess the cost of living and the pressures that you're facing, we're launching a new tool today, Sky News is. Paul Kelso's here to tell us a little bit about it. And Paul, very well timed, because alas, prices on the rise again today.
They are. So this is our economic pressure tracker. We've pulled together data sources to help us examine how global economic shocks impact the prices that matter here at home. We've got our own measure of that out today. Consumer price inflation, the main measure of what's happening to price increases. Inflation has actually backed off in June. This is a backward-looking number. Remember, we're looking at June, 2.6%, down from 2.8%, so prices rising less quickly. Now, the main driver of that, two of them, food and fuel prices, according to the ONS. Our tracker allows us to take a look at both of those. Let's look at petrol prices to start with. We can see that spike in prices that followed the US-Israeli attacks on Iran. That's where the war starts. And in June, they were backing off. They are now ticking up again, as are diesel prices. I can show you those. Plenty of people still drive diesel cars. A really steep increase in prices. Again, they were on the wane in June, which was good news, and that's because they were largely following the oil price. So we can look through this tracker at all the major energy commodities. Let's look at crude oil. There it is, the oil price, which leapt up above $120 a barrel at one point, all caused by the constriction of the Strait of Hormuz, through which so much energy flows. Again, they were falling in June. We thought we were on the right side of $80 a barrel. They're now back above $90 a barrel, which is a flashing light on the global economic dashboard, and that's largely about the uncertainty in the Gulf. So those are the factors we can show you behind those changes in fuel prices, which dragged down inflation. Food was also part of that. Food prices not rising as fast. We've seen food prices really rising very steeply for a year or two, but that's gone into reverse. We've got all the major food commodities, all these traded on global markets, their global prices. Look at dairy prices here. Cheese and milk, staples of our shops, all on the way down. So that backs up what the ONS's data is telling us. Let's look at cereal prices as well. So there's a similar pattern there. Inflation always raises questions about what is that going to do to the Bank of England's decision-making around interest rates. We look at our suite of economic data here. Let's look at interest rates. We see they were on the decline. They were coming down because inflation thought we'd broken the back of it before the war began. They've been on hold at the Bank of England ever since. The latest market data is telling us that the next meeting, which is coming up shortly, it's likely it's almost that there will be a hold in those rates, but there is now an implied hike at the next meeting in September, another quarter-point increase back up to 4%. I'll show you one more screen. This is gilt yields. This is a proxy for the cost of borrowing. How much would it cost John Healey when he goes to the markets to borrow money if he's got to borrow to fund Andy Burnham's spending pledges? Borrowing has been on the increase, a little bit an increase since Andy Burnham stepped into office, but that is mirrored across most European markets because of what is happening in the Gulf. The price of oil at the moment is trumping the domestic political uncertainty. You can catch all of this on our app and on our website, our economic data tracker, and we'll, of course, be using it to help tell the stories behind the numbers that count here on screen too.
Paul, lovely stuff. Thanks so much. Paul Kelso there for us.
And just listening to that, it makes me think about that Iran story that we were discussing earlier as well, and how that is really the biggest kind of impact on so many of those data sets.
Yeah, and look, I mean, it's all how long it was the same question at the start of the war was how long does it prolong? And as it does prolong now, the big fear we have this time around is strategic reserves of oil and gas are lower. Across the world, they were tapped and used to get us through the first few months of the war, and they're not, it takes a lot to refill them because obviously we're using a lot of what we import at the moment. So if this prolongs for much more than it has as well over the summer, then I think we'll be back to in a much more scary position, but it's ticking up in advance now.
We're going to talk next about a potential change of ownership at Liverpool Football Club. So the Amazon founder, Jeff Bezos, has been approached by a consortium looking to buy a stake in the club. We understand there's no guarantee, though, that investment will go ahead. Well,
let's bring in Mark Kleiman, because he's been breaking this story. Mark, good morning to you. So there was a story that was emerging yesterday that there is a consortium looking to buy a stake in Liverpool. Talk us through that and this latest detail you've uncovered about Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, that's right. So yesterday afternoon we got news, courtesy of the Financial Times actually, that a consortium spearheaded by a man called Amit Bhatia, who is the son-in-law of Lakshmi Mittal, a steel tycoon, that he was spearheading this consortium that was in talks to buy a minority stake in Liverpool Football Club from its current owner, Fenway Sports Group. Fenway Sports Group has owned Liverpool for the best part of 20 years, has had a very successful period of ownership financially. And what I discovered last night was that Jeff Bezos, the Amazon founder, the world's fourth richest man, is potentially going to be part of that investor group, which is going to buy a stake of potentially as much as 30% in Liverpool Football Club. Now, as Sophie, you pointed out, that investment has not yet been confirmed. The talks are ongoing. But my sense from my sources is that Jeff Bezos is very likely to be involved in this deal. And that's a very significant moment, not just for Liverpool and any of their fans watching today, but also for English football more generally.
It's also really interesting on this report is the valuation that's being mooted. Although, as you say, it's not a full transaction, it's expected to be a minority stake, values Liverpool, according to this report, at £6 billion, which is very high for UK sports franchises relative to transactions we've seen in the last 5 years.
Absolutely, Wilf. That number is probably at the top end of expectations. It's going to be somewhere between £4.5 and £6 billion this deal, if it proceeds. I think what it underlines is a couple of things. Firstly, the sheer influx of American money into the Premier League in recent years has intensified. Now, roughly half of the top-flight clubs are owned by principally American shareholders. And what we've also seen is that the value of sports franchises and teams generally around the world has been subject to rampant inflation. We've seen huge deals larger than this potential Liverpool valuation in a number of American sports transactions recently. And this inflation in the value of prestige sports teams and leagues is continuing to accelerate. So if this deal involving Jeff Bezos does go ahead, and I suspect that it probably will in the coming weeks, then we should expect to see it set pretty much a record for an English Premier League club valuation. It will be broadly comparable, I suspect, to what we saw at Manchester United a couple of years ago when Sir Jim Ratcliffe's Ineos Group bought a minority stake in the Old Trafford club, and also the deal which saw Roman Abramovich's sale of Chelsea about 4 years ago, which was valued at about £4 billion.
If Liverpool were worth 5 or 6, Arsenal could be worth more because we're champions.
You've got better fans, Liverpool, though, haven't they? So, that's the difference.
I'm definitely not getting involved in this.
Who do you support, Mark?
I'm a Charlton Athletic fan.
OK.
It's a proper football club right there.
Probably not worth quite as much.
I mean, that's open to debate.
That's a classic Arsenal fan comment there. There you go.
Probably is that. That's a fair point. Anyway, moving on. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has sacked his military chief, General Alexander Siersky.
So the decision follows protests against an earlier decision to sack another key figure, the head of the Ministry of Defence as well. So let's bring in our security and defence editor, Deborah Hayes. But what is going on? Because it feels like a lot of people are saying that actually Ukraine are doing relatively well in the war at the minute, and you've got these two big figures going.
Yes, there's been extraordinary turmoil at the top of the chain of command in the middle of a war, so the last thing that Ukraine needs. But what we've seen yesterday was the president finally moving after days of protests following his decision last week to get rid of his very popular defence minister, Mikhailo Fedorov, to yesterday sacking... Sorry, there's a car alarm going off behind me. I'm at the Farnborough Air Show. There's normally planes that are the noisy problem, not cars. But yes, so yesterday, Volodymyr Zelensky moving to sack General Alexander Syrsky. Now, that is a name that you'll be very familiar with. It's a spectacular fall from grace from a man who was heralded as the hero for for leading the defence of Kyiv in the first weeks of Russia's full-scale war. He then spearheaded this very successful counter-offensive in the latter days of the summer of 2022 into September, seizing swathes of Kharkiv region back from the Russians. He was also the mastermind behind a very audacious move by the Ukrainians to then invade Russia effectively, going into the Kursk region, temporarily seizing territory there. However, since his move to become the head of the Ukrainian armed forces, which is when he did that Kursk operation, replacing the previous military chief, Valery Zaluzhny, Syrsky has really fallen out of favour with a lot of soldiers who don't believe that he is giving sufficient thought to the life of his soldiers. That's a criticism that I've heard a number of times. And there's also been criticism about his ability to adapt to the modern evolving nature of war. And so there had been reports over the last few months of friction between Syrsky and Fedorov, that very popular young defence minister who has a background in technology transformation and is very much at the forefront of drone warfare. And then Fedorov, obviously, he was seen to be pushed aside by the Ukrainian president last week. There were protests in the streets across the country in the wake of that move, highly unusual in the middle of a war where there is generally unity, a sign of the pressure on the president, perhaps. And then, yes, last night, the news that people had long been really expecting, that Syrsky is off. A much younger, very popular commander is going to be taking his place. President Zelensky has been having talks as well with the former defence minister, Fedorov. He said he offered him a prominent position in government. There are reports, though, that Fedorov has rejected that offer. That's not confirmed, but we will find out, I'm sure, more today about this incredibly turbulent time with all of the factions. Yes, they might be disagreeing internally, but they are all united against one enemy, and that's Russia. So they will want to get this period of friction resolved and the war-fighting effort back as the prime focus.
And Deborah, whilst you're there, you're obviously at the Farnborough Air Show, which is very much a defence gathering as much as commercial aircraft, and we do believe Wes Streeting will be there today?
Yes, our new Defence Secretary, we think that he is going to be coming here today, hence why I've dragged myself out of bed once again to come to the air show, as glorious as it is. But yeah, this place, it's a showpiece for the UK civil aviation and military aviation sector. Actually, it was opened 2 years ago. It happens every 2 years here in Farnborough and then alternate years in Paris. But 2 years ago, it was one Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, who opened this event, a sign of just how important it's viewed by the government. It's a place where they want to make contracts with other companies to sell British products. And we've also just had an announcement just now from the Ministry of Defence about a new more than £700 million deal that's being signed for investment in the future of the Royal Air Force, this vision from the Chief of the Air Staff to have, it's like companion drones that will be flying with fifth generation and in the future sixth generation warplanes. It's seen as the future of domination of the skies. So we'll be hearing more about that in the next few minutes, I'm sure. But yes, Wes Streeting will be here. He's going to be giving a speech, I think. And of course, all eyes will be on him, the new Defence Secretary, only his second full day in the job, and we'll be wanting to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, we certainly will. Deborah, thank you very much indeed. Deborah Haynes there our defence editor. Right, let's get the take of the Conservatives, shall we, to the new government and the first days in the job. We're joined now by Sir Mal Stride, who is the Shadow Chancellor. Great to have you with us. So we've had another cost of living announcement, £2 cap on bus fares. Do you welcome it?
Anything that's about getting pressures on cost of living down, of course, is to be welcome. But the critical question is, how is it going to be funded? And it all seems rather vague on this particular announcement. Some sort of changes to the budget in the Energy Department, but it's not clear how the money is going to be found. And we had an announcement yesterday, of course, about reducing or removing VAT on energy bills. And there the government was saying, well, we're making funding savings out of the money that we would have been spending on digital ID cards. But actually the OBR pointed out that there was no funding allocated to that particular programme, so no savings to be found. So I think there's a pattern here.
Both in isolation then. So the first one, the bus fares, they're basically saying that what they're going to do is at the minute they're giving grants worth nearly all this money to countries for international climate projects, and that's going to be loans. So in other words, they'll have to pay them back. So that does feel like it is clear, no?
It feels like an accountancy trick to me, saying, if you recategorise something you were definitely going to do before and you're going to say, well, actually, we're going to count it not as a grant but as a loan.
Well, that is quite different, though, isn't it? Saying you have to pay the money back.
That feels like an accountant poring over a spreadsheet and saying, oh, well, actually, if we move it from this column into this column, even though it's the same basic thing...
Well, if you get the money back, then it's quite different, isn't it?
Well, there's the word if in that sentence.
If I lend you a fiver, I'll give you a fiver, it's quite different.
There's an if in that sentence. And what we do know about the VAT reduction on energy bills is that the OBR themselves said back in November of last year that there was no allocation of funding for the digital ID card scheme.
So we're moving to digital...
no savings to actually be made.
We're moving to the digital...
That one seems to me to be very clear.
We're moving to the digital ID scheme now. The OBR also said that there was a £1.8 billion cost to it.
Yeah, but there was no funding allocated to pay for the £1.8 billion. That's the point. So they highlighted the cost, which is, you're absolutely right, £600 million a year for 3 years. But they also made a very clear statement at several points in the report they issued in November of last year that the money had not been allocated to pay for it.
So in a way, isn't that Keir Starmer's fault, not Andy Burnham's? Isn't this another thing that Keir Starmer is basically...
Not at all. This is a decision.
In the same way the defence thing, saying, we've got to find the money for this, we've got to announce it, we haven't worked out how we're going to pay for it.
Andy Burnham, it's on him now, Andy Burnham has said, right, we are going to ease the cost of living pressures by dropping VAT on energy bills. And he has also said, and this is how we're going to pay for it. The problem is the money is not there.
But they were going to spend it on
That's his decision.
billion, right? Because there's not...
Well, it was in the numbers, but as the OBR said, whilst the cost was in the numbers, there was no plan or indication as to how that would actually be funded. That's the point. So it wasn't clear where the money was actually going to come from. So you can't make a saving on a funding commitment where there's no actual suggestion as to where the cash is going to come from. I think that's the point.
Can we talk about the principle of the announcements? Because I think what is clear is the message that Andy Burnham is sending. He is saying that he's going to focus on domestic cost of living pressures, energy bills, bus fares, over international climate and net zero allocations, right?
So, well, he's done this accountancy trick that we've been
made your point on the accountancy,
grants and loans. Yeah.
But do you welcome the overall focus on cost of living? It reminds me a bit of the kind of Linton Crosby, get the barnacles off the boat, let's just focus just on cost of living.
So, look, what they should be doing on energy costs, for example, is what we're saying with our cheap power plan, which is to get the carbon taxes and the green levies off people's bills and businesses' bills, and that way you could actually make a saving of 20% on everybody's bill. Now, that is a fully funded, fully costed plan.
How are you funding that?
Sorry,
how are you funding that one?
Well, as I say, if you take these carbon taxes off people's bills and you take the subsidies, the green subsidies that are in those bills, if you take them out and just don't do those anymore, you are able to pass on the benefits to the people that are paying those bills. So that's a very clear,
I know that
clearly costed plan.
The scale of what you're proposing is different, but Andy Burnham is also saying get bills down by taking money away from green. That is effectively what this is doing, isn't it? You can quibble over the loans and the...
No, what he's doing is he's saying, look, I've identified an area of spending, which is on digital ID cards, and by not spending that money, I'm going to transfer that money over to saving people the VAT on their energy bills. The problem is that the money he's identified where the savings apparently are isn't really there, because as the OBR has said, that money was never allocated to digital ID cards. And that's the point that Darren Jones made when he tweeted, I think yesterday or the day before, I think it was yesterday, saying that basically that money is not there. It was never a funded commitment, and therefore how can you make a saving based on a commitment that was never made in the first place?
But you didn't expect Darren Jones to be doing your political arguments for you,
Well, it shows how things are beginning to unravel rather fast, rather early for Andy Burnham. And at the heart of it, if I may say, Sophie, is a lack of a plan. We've got somebody, he was talking about doing things on tax just a few days ago. Now, apparently...
He's only 2 days in, come on.
Well, I know, but he's only but that's my point.
Not even 2 days in.
He's a couple of days in.
What time is it? It's 9:25 in the morning.
But he hasn't come forward with a clear
day
plan.
1.5.
He's avoiding parliamentary scrutiny. We tried to have a debate in which we would be able to have a proper scrutiny of the plans in Parliament. The government changed the whole business for that day. The House of Lords yesterday tried to achieve the same thing, just to pass a motion that would have meant that things would have been debated, and the government shut it down. Okay. So we're seeing all these things come out without a clear plan behind them. And that's why we're now having discussions about whether they're funded or not. And the conclusion of all this will be increased taxes.
Mel Stride, thank you very much indeed. Always good to have you on the programme. Coming up, we are going to be talking about our investigation into the toxic chemicals found at 3 absolutely massive illegal waste sites across the country.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury.
I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Welcome back. Well, 2 of the men jailed for killing the police officer Andrew Harper may be eligible for early release under the government's controversial scheme to ease overcrowding in prisons.
You might remember the story. It's really tragic. PC Harper died on duty when he was dragged down a country road behind a car after he responded to a burglary. His mother has described the situation as an insult. Let's bring in Barnaby, shall we? It's an awful story, and just remind us of what happened.
Yeah, a really awful story. Andrew Harper was 28 years old. He'd been married for about a month when he died. He was responding to a burglary of a quad bike. As you said, he was dragged along a car after his leg got tangled in a strap. And there were 3 teenagers driving that car. And 2 of them, who were passengers, were found guilty of manslaughter. They were sentenced to 13 years. They were Jesse Cole and Albert Bowers. And we've learned over the last 24 hours that they might be eligible for early release. They might be eligible to be released after serving 50% of their sentence rather than 2/3, which is what it used to be. That's because some new sentencing guidelines are coming in September. They were brought in to ease overcrowding in prisons, and up to 6,000 prisoners could be eligible for early release. But the family of Andrew Harper are clearly really upset by this. They've been speaking to The Telegraph. His mother, Debbie Adlam, we've got some lines from her we can bring you. She told The Telegraph, "It makes me feel sick. Andrew's life doesn't get to come back. It feels like a slap in the face and an insult. Any reduction makes a mockery of sentencing. It's a gift for prisoners to be let out early. The cost is to us, the victims, and then the public." So some very strong words there from Andrew's mother.
And obviously this is all about the kind of early release scheme. Has the government said anything, on the Ministry of Justice?
Yeah, they have responded. I think, we need to remember that back in 2024, when this was first announced, there was huge problems with overcrowding in prisons. I think at one point there were about 100 prison places left in England and Wales. So the Ministry of Justice have spoken to us. A spokesperson has commented. They said this was a horrific crime, and our deepest sympathies are with PC Andrew Harper's family and friends. In 2024, the country was facing a prison crisis and a total breakdown of law and order, with judges ordered to stop jailing dangerous criminals. This government is committed to public safety. We are building prison places at the fastest rate since the Victorian era and taking the difficult decisions needed to lock up the most dangerous offenders. After PC Andrew Harper's death, his family campaigned for those convicted of the manslaughter of an emergency worker to be given a mandatory life sentence. People with life sentences won't be affected by this change in the law. They'll still have to serve at least 2/3 of their sentence. But that doesn't apply retrospectively. So that's why these 2 might be let out after 50% of their sentence served.
Well, thanks so much. Much appreciated. Now, after the break, we're going to look at how Andy Burnham's government is planning to deal with the rise of AI, including a new AI minister specifically. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Putting AI at the heart of government. That's how one minister's defended the Burnham government's decision to scrap the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. Instead, a new AI minister has been given a seat at the top table. Joining us now, the former chair of the government's AI Council, Tabitha Goldstaub. Tabitha, also the founder of Lichen AI. Thanks so much for joining us. I mean, having a specific AI minister, I presume you think this is a great step.
I think Andy Burnham, the new AI minister, has the opportunity to make the UK the best place in the world to adopt AI technology for real people to feel the benefits. And what we're seeing with this move is it's showing that we don't think of this technology as separate sector, but actually a foundation for all future industry, the future culture, future public dialogue, not in one place where the responsibility lies only there. It's actually something that the whole of government needs to be involved in.
And do we have a lot of work to do to get to a place where we're one of the most attractive countries for AI development, or are we already doing all right?
We have the most amazing foundations and we're already doing really well. And we have a vision and a plan in the current AI adoption plan for how to get to an even better place. We have the right strategy for strengthening the fundamentals, ensuring it's a good place to start and scale a company, ensuring that we have all of the compute needed. What I don't think we have, which I'm really excited about this new focus, is thinking about how real people are going to feel the benefits. How do you co-design solutions with the public? How do you make sure workers are deciding what they want from this technology? The skills, the training, the bottom-up use cases. How do we ensure that requirements are captured all over the country, in small businesses, large corporations, so they're deciding how we reimagine the future for ourselves? That's the piece I'm most excited about now.
What about just the sort of formal sort of working of government? And as we mentioned in the intro, scrapping the previous science department. Is there risks that in the transition, as the old minister leaves, the new minister comes in, the department changes, that we're too slow?
I think that's something that will always be a challenge, but it feels like the people in the roles right now don't want to let that happen. And so I'm really focused on hope and believe that if the ecosystem can get behind the new regime and make sure that we are doing all of the things that we should be doing to not slow down, then we don't need to. There's obviously always a risk that we will.
We were discussing a story earlier in the programme that OpenAI acknowledged late yesterday that one of its models hacked another AI company because it thought it was the right thing to do. How dangerous a situation are we in at the moment when we see stories like that?
I think the truth is that we have to focus on what the security, governance, regulations that we need to ensure that we're not in those kind of risks. We are still at a position where we have the agency to make these decisions. And so racing farther and faster at bolstering things like the AISI and other institutions that we already have that will protect these sorts of rogue incidents. I think we have the pieces in place. We just have to be stronger and more robust with them.
And what about Mr. Narayan, the AI minister? What do people in the industry think of him?
I think he has been hugely welcomed, and you can see from the AI adoption plan that people are rallying around the things that need to be done and rallying around his decisions in those.
Thanks so much for joining us, Tabitha. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Now, we've been talking all morning about these illegal waste dumping sites. It's been a massive surge in recent years, and there are literally mountains of rubbish at these sites.
We also now know the real extent of the damage. There's the obvious immediate damage that is clear to see. But on top of that, Sky News has carried out an investigation over the last 6 months and worked with top scientists testing soil, water and air around those sites.
Dan White has been investigating. Let's have a look at what he found.
This is completely unethical, unmoral degradation of the environment and potentially health risks to the general public.
For the first time, we've uncovered what's hidden in plain sight.
The rubbish has been festering, leaching into water, literally burning in to the countryside air.
Sky News has teamed up with a group of scientists.
You've got this very complex, heady chemical soup going on.
To uncover a toxic mix.
Okay, well, there's a lot of smoke. Yeah, you can smell it as well. It's a very strong sort of plasticky smell.
We've tested the air, water and soil at 3 of the country's biggest illegal waste sites, making up 170,000 tonnes of rubbish.
If my children are breathing in all that, what is that doing to them long term?
Dangerous, even potentially banned chemicals.
Is this going to get worse? Is this going to spread?
An urgent call for action.
The Environment Agency says its own scientists are now carefully considering our findings.
What's the point of having environmental agencies if they don't do anything or don't seem to be doing anything?
There is no argument. You should ignore this and hope the problem goes away.
Amid an illegal waste crisis, this is the story of what lies beneath.
Well, Dan's back with us, as he has been all morning, and make sure you check out his full report on YouTube. Dan, have we seen a turning in the tide of this at all? Because you've been talking about this for a year or two now. So there is now attention on it. Are we still seeing new illegal sites popping up and growing across the country?
Yeah, I mean, they are still cropping up. It's a bit sort of like whack-a-mole, really. These things are hidden in plain sight quite often in remote areas of the country. And once a site has been found, investigated, perhaps the Environment Agency has put a closure order on the site, we hear from locals of another field being used maybe 5 miles away. So it's a constant game of cat and mouse for the authorities. The Environment Agency has certainly outwardly said it's trying to do a lot more. They launched a big 10-point plan back in March. A lot of that is to do with awareness, joining up authorities and so forth. Some of that may sound a little bit weak. They are calling on the public to report things as quickly as possible. But like I've been saying throughout the morning, sometimes once it's too big, that's when people notice, and then it just becomes a problem that's difficult to solve.
I just can't get over the size of these things. What kind of rubbish is being dumped there? Where does it come from?
Yeah, I mean, most of it, at a lot of sites, is commercial shredded waste as well, which is interesting. So waste might be picked up from a building site, it then goes to a processing plant where it is quite literally shredded and sorted. Then it goes on to whether it's going to be recycled or go to landfill. There's lots of parts of the chain, so quite often it's shredded waste. What we found in this investigation, especially at the site in Gloucester, where it's so big, it's combusting, 100,000 tonnes of weight, it is literally just setting on fire. It's remarkable to go there because the cliff drop at the edge of this field leads into a floodplain that goes towards the River Severn. Real environmental concerns there. But those flames contain 763 chemicals. And that is, what does that mean? Well, it's a huge amount. It's 4 times the number of chemicals that you'd breathe in from a car exhaust, for instance.
You mentioned that the Environment Agency gets reported to them, they look into... Is this not ever breaking and entering? Or the people own the land that they're using or not?
Yeah, quite often they'll buy the land themselves. It could be cheap brownfield sites, something that can't be built on. They will rent the land off a farmer. That's an industry that's struggling. And they'll say, do you want 15 grand for the year? Can I just store some building materials here? And then before you know it, it's too late. Legally, the onus to clean up these sites actually falls on the landowner itself, not perhaps the person who rented it. So then you have farmers stuck, well, this wasn't me, and they are technically the ones who have to clear it up. So then these long investigations continue, and they take years.
So can I ask, I was just you talking about the shredded waste. May it be, then, that actually some of this waste is waste that's being initially disposed of legally, like through your kind of council collection or whatever, but then somewhere down that chain, someone's trying to make a bit of money?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a long chain, and we all of us don't really know what that chain involves and where the waste goes. There's different processing plants. The Environment Agency, we know, in the last few weeks has been carrying out raids at legal waste facilities that they suspect of criminal involvement. So it's multi-layered. You've got organised criminal gangs behind dumping this waste, but weaved in with that, and they'll claim they didn't know where it was going. It looks legit. Licences can be fraudulently, obtained, and they'll say, well, we don't know where this was going. So it's really messy and it's really complicated.
Dan, as always, thanks so much. Watch the full report. Well worth doing so. It's on the Sky News YouTube channel now.
We've had a bit of reaction from the Prime Minister to his story, which is a bit of a bizarre way of saying that. I don't know where that came to me from. But Andy Burnham has taken to X to talk about his bus announcement. He has said, for too long, people have said that cheaper transport isn't an option. I don't accept that. I've done it before and now I'm doing it again. A £2 cap on bus fares for millions across the country.
Interesting that he's tweeting about it a few hours after it comes out.
I mean, yeah, to be honest, that quote was pretty much in the press release as well.
Yeah.
I think he's just repeating it. He's referring, of course, that he's done it before, as in Manchester, because he introduced the cap in Manchester as well. And actually, a big part of the legacy, you know, when I went up to, you know, the kind of greater Manchester suburbs, people talked a lot about Andy Burnham and the buses. So it's the kind of thing that matters.
Let's have a look at the weather.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Heatwave conditions will briefly return for some over the next few days and it'll be largely dry, but the weekend will bring changes. Expect a mainly dry morning with long sunny spells for most, but northern and eastern parts will see more cloud. Scotland, northeast England will be quite grey with drizzly outbreaks possible. They'll become warm to very warm with light winds. The afternoon looks brighter across more of northern Britain, but a few showers are likely there. Meanwhile, Donegal and other parts of Northern Ireland will turn dull and damp in weather terms. Elsewhere, it will be largely fine into the evening. That's it.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
It's winding me up that we're saying the weekend's going to bring changes and we're not saying what those changes are. The last bit of the script says Friday will bring more of the same, but the southeast will be a bit warmer. So what's going to happen on Saturday and Sunday?
Well, as you know, I'm a bit of a weather expert, so do you want me to ad-lib it?
Yeah, go on. What do you reckon?
I'll do it next hour.
OK, great. There isn't a next hour. Oh, forget expensive days out this summer. Our next guest is going to tell us how you can entertain your kids for free.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Middle East correspondent. We've just entered Gaza. The vista out there is complete destruction. I'll always remember going into Gaza City during the war. All around us was destruction and the sounds of battle. I witnessed the scars of the October the 7th attacks, burnt out homes, bullet holes in walls and bloodstains on the floor.
People were murdered, people were kidnapped.
The Israelis insist that many of these prisoners are terrorists, but here the Palestinians consider them a blend of freedom fighters and political prisoners. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Okay, there's a lot of firing going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, sir.
Let's go. Watch, wait, right, we're going to get in. Right, get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. The next step for them quite often is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Whoa. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera, turn around and go away.
Okay, but
listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw 2 guys, 2 bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
that is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
I will always remember the atmosphere at the Shanghai protests. It was an electric mix of excitement, fear and defiance, and a sense that history was being made.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Welcome back. Some parents will spend an average of £400 per child this summer on action-packed days out. But a new survey suggests that kids have just as much fun when they're getting outside, enjoying woods, ponds and wildlife.
And here with a few ideas is the 11-year-old environmental enthusiast, Anishwa Konchala, who is known as a young David Attenborough. It's so great to have you with us, by the way. So you love nature, right?
Yes, I absolutely love it. It's my favourite thing to go and understand.
And where did your passion for it? Have you? I'm about to say you've had it from a young age. You're clearly still a young lad, but always as far as you can remember?
Yes, I always loved nature, but the thing that really made me want to protect it and go as big as I am right now is purely when I saw a picture of a whale which had died because of plastic pollution. And when that happened, I knew I had to do something, and I knew I had to speak to all of you about this impact that is happening because of pollution. And now I'm here.
I love it. Well, we're very happy to have you. So you live in the kind of Greater Manchester area, is that right? And so talk to me a bit about nature around where you live. What kind of nature do you see?
Well, I'm very lucky because I am really close to a rich population of nature. We have foxes, owls, sparrowhawks, peregrine falcons, kestrels. I can go on and on for the entire day if I want to, just naming the animals. But let's just say we have a wide population, so I'm just generally really into nature, so it's a great place for me.
And so much so you went on Britain's Got Talent as well?
Yeah.
And was that a fun experience?
Oh, that was so much fun. At that age, you know that feeling when you were children where you feel like you can do anything? That happened to me and it got supercharged, so that's where I got my main confidence from. Being on stage and everybody cheering for me, that's what got my confidence.
Sky News is a better experience.
Yeah, way better, sure, yeah. And we started off in the introduction talking about how much money parents are spending on activities for their kids, right? And you do feel that pressure, I think, as a parent to, like, keep throwing stuff at them. So I guess what's your tips for parents on how they can get their kids to enjoy nature in the way that you do? Where should they be taken?
So I would have to say that instead of paying thousands of pounds, or as you say, £400 averagely, instead, parents can go sightseeing, which is a campaign made by Specsavers. And what's happening there is they are saying you can be tight and still go and have lots of fun, because children can see wonder in the most everyday things just if they can see it clearly.
So but I mean, I'll be honest, a lot of parents will be listening to this saying, you know, if I take my kid to the park, they're going to be like, this is really boring, please can we go home and play on the PlayStation? So what should you be pointing out? What should you be looking at?
It's like, what I want them to see is the wonder in the most everyday things. Like a feather, it might just look like a normal feather, but when you look closely, you can see every single barb is so unique. Or a twig, it looks normal, but with some imagination added to it, it can be a catapult, or even a Greek, or it can even be a helmet if you want it to be. So, yeah.
We're just looking at some of your videos on the screen of animals you've been with. Do you have a favourite animal?
So I'm always hopping around because I don't have one specific favourite animal, but right now, my personal favourite for the time being is probably either a fox or a tawny owl, because in my local area, I was actually following 2 different tawny owl families, both with chicks.
Oh, that's very cute.
Yeah.
Where were they? Where were the tawny
Just in our local area.
Well, like in the trees or...
Yeah.
Amazing,
trees.
Isn't it?
And foxes you find endearing and friendly?
Yes, they're so interesting. And I absolutely love how well they're able to adapt to different habitats.
I get a sense you don't feel like that about foxes as well.
No, I do. I actually see quite a few of them quite early in the morning because I get up so early, sniffing around
Yeah, I'm with you. You know, we can't sort of say, oh, we want more wildlife, but not this wildlife, not like grey squirrels or, you know, foxes. It's like, these are the guys who've adapted, right? So we've got to kind of appreciate that.
And Anisha, what do you want to do long term? Is this a passion for you both? Obviously, the wildlife is, but spreading the word, do you want to do more of the broadcasting side of it?
Yes, I really want to spread the word. And one of the main goals that I would absolutely love to do is to meet Sir David Attenborough, because I've always been a big fan of him, and he's one of the people who really inspired me to start this journey. So if I'm able to meet him, it would be life-changing for me.
I might be able to help with an introduction there.
Go on, Wilf.
Well, I can't do it on the spot.
Get your phone out.
But we'll see what we can do afterwards.
It's been really inspiring talking to you. I love, you know, what you've been talking about the animals, and I think it's a reminder that you don't just have to live, you know, in the countryside or in a beauty spot to find nature around you as well.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Real pleasure to have you with us, Anisha. We are pretty much out of time here on the programme. We will be taking a quick break, of course. Coming up on the other side will be Gareth with all of the day's top stories and Sky News today.